So many words! Hello and welcome to the Nen Show Podcast. I am your host, Craftsdwarf, here for our 6th completed series. Well, completed. One of those is, 2 of them are ongoing. Well, actually 3 if you count Boruto. Shit. Never mind. Just throw it all out. And this is my co-host, Mathwiz.
The podcast will never end. It's always ongoing.
Just like One Piece. Okay. Comments. I was in a better mood this week. Did you have any comments? Because I have a lot.
I didn't even have time to read the comments.
Right. You did finish both the readings, right? Or
I did not finish. I didn't even finish Level E. I'm like 3 chapters short.
That's fair, because that manga was unexpectedly long. Or it's the words. It's the fucking words. But we'll talk about at least what, we read. So yeah, I guess I'll start going through comments. I'm looking at all the ones I have, and I'm like, I don't think I've ever had this many comments before, even for Fairy Tail. So, Twail F, I might have miswrote but anyway, they mentioned apparently that there was a Filipino dub for YuYu Hakusho, because we were joking about that.
Oh yeah, I remember that comment.
Yes, so I just thought that was funny, because apparently, Yusuke was named Eugene. They thought Kurama was a girl, so they called her Denise, and then they changed it to Dennis, so it's like... Because they realized, wait, no, it's not a girl.
I like how even, the comment even specifies that, they had to write in that, oh, he was pretending. It's like, what? They had to mask their own fuck up.
That's so terrible. And I guess, I don't imagine anyone, because we were talking about the Do-Re-Mi last time. We did have done a Do-Re-Mi podcast since, and one thing I did mention on the episode was that, yeah, because the names of the 3 main characters they start with the syllables Do-Re-Mi, which I didn't notice during recording, but I realized after the fact. So, yeah. Anyway,
Also, Genkai is... Apparently, they thought Genkai was an old man, and they called Genkai right. Master Jeremiah? What? This sounds made up. This doesn't sound real.
That's true, but also,
that's how these dub names sometimes can be, though. So it's sounds fake, but it also sounds real.
Yeah, some Dragon Ball weird dub isms, like the Big Green dub, which literally called Piccolo Big Green. They're not even trying to represent the material at that point. So there was one interesting one by I think it was Pikachu. Pikachu. I think it was Pikachu Hunter, but for some reason, why didn't I write down the full name? Mostly because they had a pretty negative take of Yu Hakusho as a whole, mostly because of stuff that happens this reading. I do understand where they're coming from emotionally, even though I do ultimately have a much more positive opinion of Yu Hakusho as a whole, even despite some issues. I just thought it was interesting because I'm so used to seeing people, Togashi, so it's seeing such a less a take that was less positive was and like I said, I understand where they're coming from, even if obviously my emotions don't, because it was just their emotional take, it wasn't saying, oh, Yu Hakusho is a bad story. There once, we'll get to that, because it's I'm interested in your thoughts again, because you came from the anime, but yeah, Jellicock Respawn had a few comments to respond to. One, he did point out that, yes... Oh, did you have anything to say about the Pikachu? You didn't read the comment, so...
Maybe I'll do a follow-up video talking just about Level E and responding to comments to, make up for me not being prepared for the... We'll do another one of the
Maybe.
Fucking... the thing I did with the Reverie.
With the Reverie? Yeah, that would be interesting. So anyway, yeah, he mentioned that, yes, it was a Joe reference. I was just thrown off because of the differences, but it's possible. Because Japanese copyright law is weird, because it's they're really harsh when it comes to professional properties. The first episode of Osamatsu-san referenced Love Live and Attack on Titan and a bunch of other stuff. But you can't legally buy it or watch it because it was pulled because of the copyright thing. But at the same time, you could also go to Comiket and buy fan doujinshi with official characters, and that's fine. So, obviously, I guess there's a difference between, professional productions and fan productions, but, so maybe Togashi was, worried about copyright things, so he obfuscated the reference a bit because, like I said, it was the coach character from Ashito Joe, but like the teeth, instead of having pronounced front teeth, he had a giant gap, and the eye patch was on a different eye. So I was confused as to if that was supposed to be the reference, even though like I felt like if it was going to reference a thing, it would be this thing. But I don't know. Definitely read it, because if you didn't read the comments, definitely read his ones on because he had a whole essay about Sensui, and so I guess the one thing I wanted to bring up as a response to his stuff, because he brings up interesting points, but the thing is like some of the things he says are based on things that like I either didn't notice or like, I don't know, reading this made me really feel that the lack of a good translation thing, because it's like because again, for my reading, I read Viz up to volume 15, then for 16 through 19 I read the fan translation, and that is it. So for every part of the material I've only read one translation of it, where you were jumping back and forth from the Viz and the fan translation. Then there's also the dub to consider. So when he was saying things that I just straight up didn't remember, I'm like, are you misremembering from a different like part of material? But he's he likes YuYu Hakusho, so he's probably gone through a bunch of times. So maybe I just missed something because I'm stupid. So I lamented the lack of like one solid thing that we could just go to and say like this is like the definitive like closest what was supposed to be the thing, because like even if the dub made like, because he mentioned one dub line that sounded really good, but the dub also removes things or change, maybe no, not the dub, the anime in general, especially with the Three Kings arc, changes things. So like I don't know, it seemed interesting, but it's just like the translation is really hindering my ability to fully get the full picture, so to speak. So yeah, which is kind of a shame. And I might bring some of the points up later because they are relevant to a certain chapter, or a certain set of chapters rather. Anyway, Iara asked if I thought Botan was still the cutest Togashi girl. Keiko is a contender. Like, I guess the announcers are fine. We haven't even talked about Hunter x Hunter yet, so I'll put this question on hold. I only have 3 more. This was one. Okay, because like I've heard people talking about Crollo, but I never noticed this myself, and so I don't know, like, and I never even heard what it's in service to. But apparently about Crollo from Hunter x Hunter is like something about how I guess maybe Alexander has a video on it where it's like he's got the Phantom Troop is sort of like evokes parts of himself, so to speak. I don't know. Did you see Alexander's Crollo video?
Yes. Yeah, and it was definitely I had kind of been thinking about that after reading Chapter Black too, and
yes.
So, but like,
because Blue pointed out how Sensui has 7 different personalities, and it's possible that the Shinobu was his main one, and the other 6 were supposed to be evoked through the 6 people he gathered. And like a great example is there's the one murder one who has the gun for a hand. That's like the Doctor, who just hates humanity and wants it all destroyed and stuff. Like I was just considering how like I've heard the sentiment. I forget if it was Togashi from one of the interviews or just people theorizing where Hunter x Hunter has been sort of Togashi's way to explore the things he didn't get to fully do in Yu Yu Hakusho, because like we only saw or even heard about like maybe 3 or 4 of Sensui's personalities, like whereas Crollo is a character with much more relative like story relevance, and he recurs more, so there's going to be more time to flesh him out, so to speak. So I just thought that was interesting. And again, we'll talk about that in Hunter x Hunter. I keep mixing up the names. I'm stupid. Real quick, Nathaniel Jarrett asked about the show I mentioned. I'll just link the first episode in the description. It's Naoki Urasawa's Manben. It's where the general structure is like they record footage of a manga author working on their manga. Then Urasawa and the author talk about it after the fact, like watching the footage, and then they also intersplice it with like history of the manga author that the episode is focused on. It's a good show, good documentary show. Not every episode translated. Anyway, so here's one I think you could actually talk about more, because I don't know. How do you feel about the power, or Pro Jums asked about the power scaling in Yu Yu Hakusho? Because it is, especially in this arc, it gets kind of wild. How did you feel about it in general?
Well, I mean, yeah, we kind of talked about it very early on that it kind of, I guess, like, the power system, like, aura is very sort of, it's not very specifically defined or anything, so it does leave a lot more room. Even back in, like, Dark Tournament and stuff, there would be these kind of, characters would pull powers out of nowhere that we didn't know that they had. So, I mean, like, it's not really anything I had a particular issue with. But at the same time, like, it's not, like with Nen, that's something really interesting that you can look into because there's more depth and there's more specifics involved. So while, the more, what's the word? Like, the less defined structure that Yu Yu Hakusho has as far as, like, powers are concerned, it's fine. I don't have a problem with it, but it's also not something that I can, like, rarely is it something that I can dig super deep into, and like you could with Nen or whatever, where you can connect stuff with, like, the characters or, the way that a character gets a power-up or the kind of power-up that they get. Like, I remember, I think I was just recently watching it was a Mr. Morge video about, just Oda's writing, and he makes a comparison of, like, Luffy's Gear 4 or whatever being similar to the name the springy guy,
Bellamy.
Yeah, Bellamy. So there's, like, similar powers as a reflection of like, character arcs and how those two characters affected each other, and in a way, like Luffy. So, like, it's a power up that reflects, like, the character arc, and also, like, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I just went off and lost the original question.
Yeah, because you're talking about more about power systems. I think the comment was more about power escalation. Maybe would have been a better, because it kind of starts off like, oh, Suzaku, he's like a big, he's supposed to be strong, but in terms of, like, human world standards, he is, but they're, and then Toguro is, like, a big deal, but then they say, oh, he's just B class, and the demon world has A and S class, and then Ikarami even mentions in Chapter Black, like, yeah, S class is just the spirit world's distinction, like, within the demon world, two S-class demons can be leagues apart, and that's exactly what we see. Because, like, that was why I didn't mind it. I guess, like, it's not really something I mind. Like, when I see good, power escalation, like, One Piece is one of my favorite stories where I do like the power escalation and how it's handled. But, like, when it's not good or not as great, I don't mind it. Like Fairy Tail, like, there's the one moment where with the fucking Serena defeating the kings of and then getting his ass beat by Acnologia, like, that's funny. Like, no, it's not great for the power escalation at all, but it's funny. so I don't really, it doesn't bother me. And with Yu Yu Hakusho, it kind of felt like it's like the human world and spirit worlds, they're like the sort of East Blue to the grand line that is the demon world. So the expanding scale just kind of felt like the world, the world is opening up.
Yeah.
And so I didn't mind it, basically. But it's not something I mind in the first place. Like, it's a major point against Fairy Tail for me, even though it's not a great aspect of it.
I think maybe, like, a better comparison I could have made was, like, in my Passing of the Torch video with Naruto, I kind of did a little bit of power scaling of, like, how, you get, like, the Sannin are introduced, and they're kind of, like, the ceiling,
yes,
roughly. And I mean, like, it changes and stuff, and other characters kind of surpass them later, but there's a level to which they are kind of like a benchmark, and by the time they are surpassed, that's sort of the passing of the torch, and it changes, like, which characters are relevant based on, or, like, who's fighting on the front lines based on that level of power progression.
Yeah.
So I guess that's an example where, things progress in a more... in a way that, like, ties into the themes, and also, I guess, would be more subtle and, like, slow moving, as opposed to, like, Yu Yu Hakusho, where it's like, here's the real top guy. Well, actually, no. So, like, the way it keeps expanding in typical shonen fashion.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that makes my thoughts any more coherent.
Yeah, no. No, it's fine. So do you want to talk about level E first or last? Because like I say first just because it's also like, a bit out, so to speak, of the discussion, but like the comments, it's even more out than the comments, but like, I don't know.
I think an interesting thing about, at least like, okay, because I have, I saw the anime of Yu Yu Hakusho, and so just like how in the beginning there were some chapters that weren't adapted into the anime, there were some chapters at the end that weren't adapted into the anime. And the reason why that's relevant to level E is I kind of got this feeling that, some of the chapters, like 1 or 2 in particular, just felt very like, they were just kind of there. And it was like, not to say that they weren't interesting, but it wasn't like connected to the, I don't know, it just kind of felt more like an isolated story. Like it didn't entirely matter, as opposed to some of the other ones which fleshed out, or just kind of showed how the characters had grown and where they stood. I don't know, just general like character dynamic stuff.
Yeah.
And so like with level E, I definitely got the sense that it was kind of just Togashi just like having fun and just kind of drawing different. I mean, like there are connections to draw between them, I'm sure, as far as like a general overall theme or whatever. But just kind of the shenanigans going on. It didn't feel like it had like a grander, big point or like narrative to it. Like they're all just these sort of like isolated conflicts. Like at first, it seemed like we're gonna start off with like this alien comes in and we got to figure out what's going on there. And then after the 3rd chapter, we just drop them for a bit and focus on some other characters. And eventually, like, Prince or whatever his name was, he comes back and he's in it. So it's just like a fun read. It didn't feel like it had much of like, I don't know. So how it kind of related to the final chapters of Yu Yu Hakusho, which to me, some of those didn't, they weren't adapted into the anime, and I could tell that they just didn't really... They just kind of felt like Togashi was having fun making them and just kind of coming up with scenarios or whatever, which is interesting.
Like there was a whole like arc that was actually just like the OG was, submitting a manga to warn people about aliens, like, but it was presented like it was actually arc that was happening, but it was just his manga.
Yeah.
Like, so I guess like so my general opinion of it is like it was fine. It didn't make me laugh a whole lot, but it was definitely very like absurd and silly, but like it's also super interesting in regards to like how it, because it does bridge the gap between Yu Yu Hakusho, because like it's really weird because you read that Yu Yu Hakusho essay about why he ended it, and it's really like personal, and he feel he's like, I don't want to die of overwork, but then like a year and a couple months later he does like level E, which has like easily his most consistent art. It was monthly, so that was probably a big help,
It's consistent art, but it's also like, it never reaches the same quality of like Dark Tournament Toguro final form.
It's not his best art, but it's also just generally like more realistic. Like there's less like anime-isms like compared to Yu Yu Hakusho, which has more gags, like those stylistic deformation gags and kind of stuff. What was also surprised me about it is the word count, because holy shit, like there's like one of the early gags is literally just like a giant 2 pages of a diary that take up it's all text pretty much, and like
whenever he had like multiple 2-page spreads of just like text dumps, and I'm like, fuck, stop.
Yeah, and like there was a whole like a guide to the toys with the Super Sentai parody.
Yeah, I had skipped that one because I was like, I didn't have the time. I didn't have the time to read it.
Yeah, it's 3 volumes, but it reads more like 6 volumes. Like I remember making a comparison like that when I was reading Death Note, because I was like, one Death Note volume takes twice the time as it does to read a One Piece volume because of the words. Like, and level E is very much like that, where it's just like there's so many words that actually reading it takes way more time than reading something like One Piece, like compared to like Bleach. Like you have a sliding scale of like, Dragon Ball and Bleach are on one side where you can just like blaze through it and just enjoy the art and it's cool, and then you have like level E where it's like just like people meme about Hunter x Hunter having words, but it's like, no, you haven't seen shit, dog. Oh my god, it's amazing. But yeah, so like I wouldn't say I heavily enjoyed it, because maybe it's just not my type of humor. Like there was a couple parts I found amusing, ideas I found more amusing than like actually like reading it. Like I was laughing about I was laughing about something just now, but I don't think it made me laugh while I was reading it. But just thinking about it later, I thought was funny. I think it was just Togashi. Or go on.
Well, finish your thought and then I'll jump in.
It was, yeah, like you said, it was Togashi exploring a bunch of different ideas and just kind of having fun in this just with just releasing a chapter a month, and just it was cool.
Yeah, and I do think that like the whole like premise of aliens like from all these different planets or whatever just kind of existing hidden on Earth, like even like hidden amongst just the masses, definitely made it so that it was a good sort of setting for these sort of episodic conflicts, so to speak.
Right, because he could just make up an alien and do a bunch of weird shit with how that alien, like its biology and why it is the way it is.
And there were definitely certain conflicts that came up that you could like. Definitely delving into like Togashi's themes about humanity and what stuff like that. And I don't know, you could probably make some also like comparisons of like, because aliens from like different races and whatever, so you could probably read certain things from that
I didn't
angle.
read a lot into it because I was mostly just trying to get through it, and I wasn't super invested in it, honestly. Like I was able to read it, but it wasn't like YuYu Hakusho where, I was actively interested in it and revisiting the story, so I already had some context.
I also feel as though I'm definitely going to check out the anime for this one, because part of it I think was the translation, and so like I'm not sure how much of some of the jokes were Togashi just not giving a damn, or the translation taking some liberties. Like I remember there was the one line where the character's just like, man, I just took like the most liberating shit or whatever, and it's like, what?
See, okay, actually, because you showed me that before I got to that chapter, and I wonder if it's like maybe the idea is like, because I've maybe it's more common in Japan because of just like their general like culture, like their workplace culture is very difficult and stuff, but it's like there's a general association with like stomach troubles and stress. Like you might remember Sangatsu no Lion with Shimada, the mentor character. He has a lot of stomach troubles because of the burden he places on himself, and
okay,
this was also a trope I remember in Ikiru. The general premise of it is a salaryman finds out that he has stomach cancer, and is basically going to die. So it's like, so I just thought like, because that moment as I was reading it, like the character who said that like had a bunch, he was suddenly relieved of a bunch of stress in the situation that these kids were in. So I just, stomach, intestines, like that was my link. That was the best I had to explain why he would say that.
Oh,
because
okay.
So if a character is stressed, they're going to be having like stomach bowel issues, and they're not going to be able to go to the bathroom as easily. So that was
thank
again.
You for
I
the
was going into it.
Thank you for the education on the one-off line of dialogue that was kind of sort of a joke.
It's funny that I have more to say about that line than I do about the manga as a whole.
See, yeah,
no, that's a joke, but
but yeah, like part of it I did think was because there were certain, and I think also the anime just kind of structured some things a little differently, and I mean obviously padded things out in some areas or maybe expanded on stuff because it's a 13 episode adaptation for a 16 chapter manga, and yeah, I mean the manga, sort of a problem I had with it too, which is not really like, it was more that like we had our time constraints and I needed to read it by a certain time, but like the chapters were structured somewhat awkwardly. Like there would be like 40-page chapters or like 30-ish page chapters. So whereas like a chapter of Weekly Shonen Jump would be like 20 or so. So it was kind of like not quite a double length chapter all the time, but sometimes it'd be like 1.5 or something, which made it kind of awkward to read as well for me at least, because all the words.
You haven't read a monthly manga, have you? Or manga with
it depends too, because like I have Bloom Into You is technically monthly, but not all of its chapters were as long. But also like it would depend on the type of narrative being told, and like Level E wasn't something that I got like so engrossed in that I could blaze through 40 chapters, and like there would be points where like I kind of got distracted mid-chapter or whatever just because
and
all
I guess
the words
and
the scenarios not being the most like personally gripping, or Which is not to say that I dislike Level E. It's just something that I probably want to experience the anime for as well, and just kind of get another, go through the material again through like a different lens, and just kind of see how I feel about things.
Yeah, no, that's because I was also thinking about how the anime, how did that go? Because that's because like one thing about the Hunter x Hunter is it was because of how Togashi's art, like Level E has good art, but Hunter x Hunter and then of course the word count, like the anime is usually pretty good about adapting those. So I'm curious about how Level E handled that.
Togashi's work, I'm sure some people would probably argue that the manga for Yu Yu Hakusho is good, but basically what I often hear is that the anime versions of Togashi's manga are generally better than the manga, which different. Like I said in the last episode, like I was getting different thing. I was having different takeaways from the manga than I was from the anime by proxy of it being Togashi's, directly from Togashi. Obviously he has editors and stuff, but it's closer to the straight connection to the author than just the anime, where there are a bunch of people working on it, and whatever. And so I feel like Level E, I feel like it would probably have something similar. Also, like it would, keeping in mind that like the Level E manga came out in between like 1995 and 1996, whereas the Level E anime came out in like 2011,
yes, it was
2013,
like Hunter x Hunter, where there was it was like Hunter x Hunter, where there's quite a gap between like the original material coming out and then the anime. Well, I mean Hunter x Hunter is still ongoing, but still with Level E, it's like that was the same year that Hunter x Hunter came out too. I think it was 2011. So, which it is 2011. The different studio, not Madhouse. But that's interesting that like two of his works get adapted in the same year. But no, I'm curious about it. I don't know when, if, or I'll end up watching it, if ever. Because it would be like, I wouldn't mind revisiting it, even if like mostly I find it interesting in regards to like Togashi's like body of work less than I do as an individual standalone thing.
I just think I think at this point I have it as like a 6 out of 10, which I'm almost certain that going through it again I'll bump that up.
Okay.
Just because obviously I haven't even finished yet. I'm like 3 chapters shy. So it's something that I still am developing feelings on. Mm-hmm. Like I think in the context of Togashi's works, it's interesting just kind of seeing like his sense of humor, and as well as seeing the progression of certain ideas he's had, because there is obviously the one chapter where he has, he focuses on I don't know how specific we want to get in this Level E discussion, but there was the one chapter that focused on like I think it was a trans guy. At first, when I read it, I was confused by the translation and thought that the character was a lesbian, but then there were certain lines that got me confused.
Well, it's like,
so I would be curious to see
my
how
takeaway was that it was because she said that, or what seemed to be that his character was biologically female, but felt like they were born, and they never felt like that their gender was more male, and then by the end of that chapter, she the aliens had turned her into a biological male as well. So and remember we went into the I forgot about it until that chapter, but we were told that again Level E also bridges the gap regarding Togashi talking about transgender, because we talked about it with Miyuki. We brought up Aluka, and then someone in the comments mentioned Level E, and that's the only chapter that could remotely that was the one. So
and I do think I like the way he handled this more than the Yu Yu Hakusho example. Although there were still certain areas there was a point where like the characters were talking about like male and female brains and like chromosomes and stuff. That was where I
was like, does this really need to be like a brain anomaly thing? Like, why did you need to sci-fi it up? Like, that was the part where I was like, but other than that, I guess it was fine.
Like I said, not perfect from my view. But again, like I think I found it to be a little more interesting than what happened with the character in Yu Yu Hakusho. Which even then, like with the Yu Yu Hakusho character, like it was like problematic.
That was interesting, but not because it was good, right? Yeah. Or that was sorry.
And it's another one of those things where like it's interesting in the greater context, because obviously we'll get to Hunter x Hunter and we'll have more to say then.
Yes.
Yeah, like I said, I might do like a separate video and talk about Level E and more, I don't know, get more into specifics.
Maybe watch it too and talk about both.
That's probably the plan.
Okay, cool. So anyway, so there is a spoiler from Level E that you haven't read yet. But I think I might bring it up just because it is interesting.
No, yeah, I'd say go for it. It's my fault for not being done.
Yeah, no, because it is interesting in regards to both the Jalen, the Jalco, or the Respawn. Why did I forget the name already? And also just the end of this manga in general, because it is like. So yeah, we'll bring it up when that actually happens. So anyway, let's actually talk about Yu Yu Hakusho. So we start off, and Yusuke, like, I like how the first page is like he's tied up, and then it's like, oh no, he beat the shit out of all these guys while tied up.
Yeah, it's a good like setup and subversion of expectations, just like Togashi subverted the Shonen Jump.
Anyway, yeah, because Yusuke's, of course, as we ended off last time, he's. He chose to go to the human world, but now it's like, oh, no, something's missing. He's not being challenged in fights. And he is a character split between two worlds. He's demon and human, and now he's discovered his demon half. It's like, it does maybe contextualize, part of why he feels this way, perhaps. And at least, well, even if mostly it's through the fighting. But anyway, he goes to Genkai, points him to the first spirit detective. Shit, what's your name? I didn't write down the name. Anyway, yeah, you posted a couple of pages of a Viz, alteration.
Oh yeah, there was, in the fan translation, she was talking about like, oh yeah, her name was, Kuroko Sanada, by the way.
Okay, that was it. Yeah.
But anyway, it was just like a mention of like, care for some, alcohol or whatever. And Yusuke's like, wow, yeah, you sure know me. And then the kids are even like, hey, we want some. And Yusuke's like, wait, hold on, I didn't. So, yeah, it was a very like interesting little moment. But of course, Viz is like, care for some coffee. And it's like, wow, kids can't have coffee. Because, yeah.
Gore and torture and humans bad is fine, but no underage drinking.
Yeah, because there was another part, like, later in this arc where a character has, like, their arm is, like, not even connected to their body. Like, they've been tortured and whatever, and it's not censored.
There was some other stuff censored from later.
It just makes that panel from the chapter Black make even less sense, because like they what? Like we can't have
the one where we put the underwear on the guys who were torturing demons.
Well,
and,
that
like,
and
bathing in their
the
blood
way that they like censored out like part of the impalement, even though like, but later it's okay if your like flesh has been like torn away and dissolved and there's like nothing there.
No, that's like, yeah, it's really weird when like censorship, because it is inconsistent. Like with the One Piece 4Kids dub, sometimes with the cleavage they would just remove the cleavage, or they would give the character an undershirt, and there was like never a consistent rule for it. So and I remember flipping through a Dragon Ball volume, and I think there was like 2 different instances of censoring with Bulma, and like just it's just I don't know. I'm not a fan. I don't think it's necessary. As an adult, I don't think it's necessary. Just content. I don't know. Things have definitely changed. Like, that's the thing. It's like, this is from like, the mid 2000s, late 90s kind of stuff. I have a volume of Made in Abyss right now. I'm pretty sure it doesn't censor anything. It just has a PG-14 rating on the back. Like, and it's got, all the Goro, all the gore, all the freaking loli shit, like whatever. It doesn't. It's so very different.
Even then, like when Viz does their shonen stuff nowadays, it's obviously not the same as how they would have adapted things back then, or translated rather.
Yeah.
It was more
nowadays. It was just kind of neat because there's a lot of more manga getting published, and I'm pretty sure it's not censored as much, if at all. Like I can't think of any. Like nowadays, the censorship things I've been hearing about are like Sony is apparently cracking down on that, because I've heard people talk about like how visual novels are going to be coming out more on like the Nintendo Switch or Steam, because like Steam now is straight up allowing like porn and other 18 plus stuff, like what they don't care, where Sony is cracking down on it, and Nintendo's also more, like that less they're less censorship about it. So I don't know, but that's where I've been hearing these kind of talks, not really with manga. And even though manga is definitely like a growing market in the America, like I go to Barnes and Noble and I see shit on the shelves that I've like only seen online. It's like, whoa, that got an official release, that kind of thing. So it's definitely interesting to compare how it was to how it is. So, but anyway, while they're there, some emissaries from the Demon World come in. They work for Raizen, who is Yusuke's ancestor. And there's a big power struggle going on where, Raizen disagrees with eating people, etc. Yomi wants dominance, or as we find out, and Mukuro just wants things to stay the same. Yusuke fights the one guy and gets beaten, even though the guy has a really limited power, which of course, Yusuke, that's his interests. So,
and they're definitely like these two have some interesting interactions. And like there's especially the part where Yusuke refers to because Raizen, like his whole policy is that like he doesn't eat humans, and so like the people under him or whatever would also be sort of if they support him, they would have to follow that same belief system. So Yusuke is like, Yusuke has that one comment where he says something about like, they're just food to you or whatever, right? And of course, that gets called out later by...
No, here, keep going. I'm going to just mute.
The other spirit detective, Kuroko, who, pretty much says, like, at this point, like, if you're referring to other humans as just a food supply, she pretty much says that, like, you're not really... I don't think I can really call you human anymore. I don't know if you really belong in the human world, which is interesting, I think, in how it ties back to... there was the one comment from, what was it, in Chapter Black, where it said there was something about, like, preferential treatment for humans or whatever, and so here Yusuke kind of is casting that off, because, like, I think there's a degree to which we could look at this as, humans consume things, so for this instance, it would be, like, other races consuming humans, and so, you could definitely see as like, well, how could Yusuke sell out other humans? But that's kind of the point, maybe, that like,
because like Yusuke is definitely like again, he did refer to humans as food. Like he's expecting, the demons and this comes up with Raizen later. But,
he doesn't try to like, he doesn't think like he engages them on their level, I guess. Like he doesn't try to like take the moral high ground or anything in this scenario. I don't know. Like he doesn't necessarily defend humanity as like, I'm trying to think of other stories, which I can't think of any in specific, but like the tropes were like, oh, we got to defend humans from the invading aliens or whatever. And it's like, humanity is good. Humanity is this beacon of whatever. But Yusuke doesn't have that here. He kind of flips that on its head, where he's just like, yeah, humans are food for you. I get it. Obviously, that's there are even comments later when he meets up with his father, and he's like, well, hey, I could go get you some humans. And I think the dub might have added in a line where he's like, I could get, specifically pointing that like he could get evil humans or whatever. There are people who are not.
So they kind of undercut, because in the in this translate, the fan translation, right, he just says humans, like.
Well, I don't know if it necessarily undercuts, because you could probably infer something to that effect. Like, obviously, Yusuke's not going to be like, hey, let me go get Keiko if you need a human to eat.
No, he's not going to do that, of course. But at the same time, he is ultimately like, he's, because, going back to the thing Sensui was saying, it's like, and, what we did see at Chapter Black, Yusuke is, like, literally willing to sacrifice human lives so that he could have a good fight. Like, even if they're bad people, like, it's not exactly a great reason. And Raizen, of course, rejects it anyway. And of course, there's also, it is kind of, because, like, there is this perception that, the demon, humans think demons are bad, and spirit world, demons bad, which of course, it was important with Sensui and with one of those last chapters. But anyway, but yeah, and of course, because demons bad, Hiei's are always been kind of a thorn in their side, and Yusuke's become one because he's so strong. They just kind of, the spirit world's basically like, you know what? You guys want to go to demon world? Cool. Bye. Because, yeah. So I guess real quick, how did you feel about Kuwabara not being in the arc? Really?
I mean, I definitely see, the prototypical Leorio vibes here. Because, Kuwabara he's always kind of been, he was the sort of the goofier comic relief at times during the Dark Tournament, but also he could step up and, have serious fights or whatever. So it's not would I say he's the weakest? Maybe, maybe not, but he's definitely out of the main four. I definitely don't want to say he's the least important because his character arc just kind of takes him in a different direction, which I think it works. I didn't really have a problem with him not being involved in this arc because it feels he is not this. He even has a line at one point where they're departing, and Yusuke, they're both the delinquents, but it's kind of they have to go. They get either one or two different paths that they can go down as a delinquent. They can continue to follow that path and just kind of be a reject of society or whatever, an outcast of sorts, and just kind of.
Or they could.
Or Kuwabara kind of takes more the. I don't know if I'd say conformity, but, working within the system and, he, gets the education, tries to go for a good school and stuff and get a good job and that sort of thing. So he kind of abandons that delinquent. Not that he is not still, that he doesn't still, he even says that, at his new school, he kind of has a reputation for being just kind of, weird and out there because of his psychic powers and whatever, and just, his general demeanor, I guess. But he definitely kind of mellows out and goes more down the studious route, which makes sense for his character arc. I guess it's a little disappointing that he doesn't, he's not really involved in this arc. I don't quite know where he would have fit in, though.
Yeah, that's the thing. Well, see, here is because, I don't remember the exact time frame, but I do know that, at some point, Togashi gave Jump an ultimatum and basically said, I'm ending YuYu Hakusho. I literally, he was quite a bit, this stretch of chapters didn't really have, this art on the same level as the Dark Tournament, it's not as bad, there's times when it's maybe a little sloppy, so he probably wasn't at his best, but it's definitely, it's not at its worst either. Or maybe, I don't know, it didn't seem as bad as some of the parts in Chapter Black.
I definitely wonder how much of that can be attributed to his assistants too.
Yes, that's well, and because that's what I was thinking about is how when did Togashi decide to end the series relative to when it actually ended, and how much did he plan? Because okay, I guess I'll talk about one bit here is how I sort of think it's interesting. I don't know if there's anything meaningful to take from it in regards to either of these series, but Togashi deliberately seems to do things that are kind of happenstance in other manga. We talked about how the series started, he apparently always intended for it to be a battle series, but he started it in a different genre and then moved it to be but with plans to have it become a battle series, but and then the series ends like it was canceled. The very, the way it sort of, does these weird episodic chapters, one was just, a kind of, oh, here's a bunch of romances with, side characters and stuff, and here's, there's this cult that's in the spirit world, and, just really weird, off-the-wall,
yeah.
And because that's what you'll get, you'll read a 3-volume series, and suddenly, the last chapter, I remember there's even a part in Bakuman where one of their first series fails, and the editor says, you have, 4 chapters, left, you could do within reason, basically whatever, and with this chapter play with more of a rom-com angle or something like that, and that's kind of what the end of Yu Yu Hakusho feels like, where it's it feels like a manga that was just canceled, and he's just whatever, he does, but it's also he wanted it to end, he didn't end, he didn't get canceled, even though the manga reads in similar ways to ones that were canceled.
Yeah,
and
I guess that's a better way to sort of contextualize how I felt about the chapters being similar to Level E and that they were just kind of various different.
Because, I guess, and you know what, maybe it was a way to relieve stress by just doing whatever the fuck he wants, because, again, the manga wasn't canceled. Does that necessarily make the ending better? Probably not. I don't think so, at least for my personal experience reading it.
Well, here's kind of my take on it, because I'm not super disappointed in how this ended. Now, I mean, obviously, I'm coming at it from the perspective of having seen the anime. I know exactly where it cuts off and where the anime expands on things, because there's a very clear point. Although for me, I was wondering when that point would happen, because it kept going and going, and I was like, well, I remember this from the anime, and then it gets to the final fight and cuts off before the fight even finishes, and it's like, hey, we're doing other stuff, which obviously the anime kind of adds more material there.
Yes, which I'll be curious to hear about when we get to discussing it. But anyway.
I liked the ideas that this arc brought to the table, and I think for the most part, it, it's very clear that this arc is unfinished, that there should have been more to the whole Three Kings conflict. But I think for the most part, it gets across the interesting ideas that it sets out to get across, and I do think I don't know. Like I said, it does. There are certain ways in which it feels unfinished. Maybe some threads that could have had a better resolution with the arc itself. But definitely, in the last couple one-off chapters, it's interesting, because this is in some ways what I'm looking for when I say I want jump narratives to have a little more finality and have a little more falling action and more of a resolution than just kind of final fight ends, we're done. Here's one chapter to wrap everything up. We get a little more seeing how the characters act in their daily lives,
and how the world
after.
changes, and how everything settles.
Yeah, we get a lot of references to, it's not just fit everything into one chapter. We see what some of the side characters from previous arcs are up to. We get to see Yusuke run a ramen shop, and Keiko and Kuwabara doing their studies and stuff with Kurama and Hiei. But yeah, there were at least a chapter or two that I felt didn't really offer that same sort of catharsis and could have maybe been used to flesh out the ending a bit more, because there were the two just kind of self-contained gag chapters or whatever, what was the one you mentioned it earlier? I don't know. It was
the religious cult thing.
Yeah. So it was more
where
what was it
that felt like it was structure, because that was the last thing that happened before the actual final chapter. Because
okay, well that one at least I think. It's very much a final hurrah. The band's back together last time.
That's what I was gonna kind of say, because it's kind of the big final fight before the last chapter that actually ends it. Except it's not that, even though it's also suddenly high stakes.
Yeah,
Yusuke might die. So it was kind of the thing you don't like in other, or you don't like. So, but don't. See in other things and think about how it could be different. But it also isn't that, so it's weird.
It is and isn't, because it doesn't have the same. The thing about the normal final fight is that it has all the build up of chapters and chapters leading up to it. But whereas this one was an episodic, world-ending stake sort of thing.
Yeah,
so
it's just they literally have to explain the spirit world has different religions. This has always been a thing. We're not making this up literally right now. That kind of thing.
Yeah, so it
compared to yeah,
it definitely has problems, but it's not in this. I didn't get the same atmosphere from it as this is the conclusion to the final arc that has been built up for the entire narrative or whatever have you.
Yeah, no, I gotcha.
For me, it was more what was the chapter right after? Because I forget what number the chapter was, where the fight with Yusuke just kind of cut Yusuke and the other Yomi just cuts off, and then there's a chapter which kind of deals with some of the resolution of that. The chapter after that is just sort of a one-off, episodic chapter that I felt that one I wasn't. Oh, it was with the stuff with like Keiko's all girls school, and like Yusuke had to like cross dress and go in to like check out the spirit.
That's right.
And Togashi
yeah.
even explains. There's a little note. It's like, this story shows that humans can be as bad as demons, and sometimes worse. And then there's Yusuke's editor.
There's like an editor's note.
Yeah.
Pointing out like, this Yusuke's editor. Yeah, he's like, but Yusuke's a demon, and then Togashi's like, yeah, that part I definitely want to talk a lot about because there's some other stuff around that's really weird.
Mm-hmm. So like, I think I get what Togashi was going for there, but it almost felt unnecessary because like, I get the whole thing with the demons and the humans. We already had the arcs that build up.
Yeah, there's good parts to it. There's bad parts to it.
Okay. Sorry. One last thought before I'll hand it back over to you. But it definitely felt like that chapter in particular felt like early like spirit detective shenanigans chapter. So it's almost like it went back to its roots.
Circular,
which didn't
deep.
I get like it almost feel like it felt like it didn't work because like that's how a lot of Jump stories start is they go from like the episodic conflicts to then building up to a broader narrative, and it's rare that you even have the opportunity to see the story flip back to the episodic nature, and maybe that's why that one in particular feels kind of out of place.
Yeah, so it's different, not necessarily like like I said, the ending is really weird. And I see mostly what's overpowering a lot, not maybe overpowering, but like standing out for me is a certain narrative choice I'm not sure if I agree with ultimately. But anyway, to finish a couple of my thoughts, going back to like Togashi deliberately doing things that are more happenstance. Hunter x Hunter, like where the anime ends, it like he talked about in an interview how like he wanted people to read because like he's read series where it's like, well, that was a perfect place to an ending, why not end it there? And the series keeps going, and he wanted to do that deliberately with that part of Hunter x Hunter. Like the series reaches a point like it reasonably could end, but then keeps going. So again, this is something he's deliberately doing. And then another point I want to bring up on Kuwabara is like the other thing about the ending is that like I feel like it could have been expanded. Like imagine if like Three Kings was actually like two more decent sized arcs, one that like fully goes through the whole Three Kings conflict and stuff, and then one that has the cooldown where it like goes more into the human demon relations and the sort of merging of these two societies, which just kind of like happens in the manga.
Yeah.
Because I thought about Kuwabara, and Kuwabara would have been a really perfect character for that because like he is pure human and is in love with the demon, with Yukina. And like, so as far as like bringing Kuwabara back, like this would have been that would have been something that could have happened, I guess, in regards to his character.
Man,
so
Craftsdwarf, you want to give me a whole arc of falling action?
Basically, like,
you're the champ here.
I'm not sure how that would work. I'm a champ. No, but I just had that idea while both reading it and discussing it because like that's a way you could like Kuwabara goes away during Three Kings and comes back for the human demon world mergence, like that's fine. Because like
it's definitely something that like in Hunter x Hunter Togashi kind of does that when characters aren't relevant, they kind of go off and do their own thing and then they come back.
No, keep going. Yeah.
No, that was it.
No, yeah, because like I would, I feel like it would be hypocritical of me to say like that Three Kings is bad because it doesn't have Kuwabara in it, because like One Piece splits up for Dressrosa and Whole Cake Island, it split up the main crew, and for like you said with Hunter x Hunter, like where an arc after it doesn't even have Gon as like the central character of the arc, it's Karapika, like so. Why not? Why I don't, see that as a bad. I think that if there is an issue with Kuwabara, it's that like, there is no real like resolution or like, because it's the final arc that he drops off in, which is weird. Where again, like if you had my idea where it's like he comes back for the human demon world like mergence like that, if there's more finality there, I guess, and his character is involved in the finality as a main character, and so that would have been neat. But also again, like I absolutely understand why the series isn't like that. Togashi was fucking like dying physically and mentally, and just like fucking wanted it to, he wanted the series to end, and it ended. So we jumped way ahead.
Yeah. Well, your
Okay,
idea
so
that you
going
brought
back-
up was
wait.
the idea that you brought up was
go on.
interesting. Because I remember that line from, the post from Togashi, about why he ended Yu Yu Hakusho, and there was that one line where he mentioned that, one of the last few things that could have kept him interested in Yu Yu Hakusho was, to deconstruct the characters. And I already kind of talked about how, I felt as though he kind of already did that with Yusuke, because, Yusuke, at the end of the Dark Tournament, as opposed to, or maybe it's not that he deconstructed Yusuke specifically, but, the direction the story took, the shift between, Dark Tournament and Chapter Black, I felt as though, was...
Yeah.
It felt, in that kind of vein. And so you had mentioned kind of Kuwabara bringing together, the stuff with Yukina and whatever. But, I'm not sure what ideas Togashi would have had if the series had gone on further. Because clearly he...
Yes.
That's just kind of how story writing works. I haven't published anything officially, but, I've done my stuff with my wrestling channel. And so, there are definitely ideas that kind of...
Yes.
You can come up with ideas as you go along. Some stuff gets left on, the cutting room floor or whatever. So I definitely do wonder if Togashi had more time to work, or maybe Jump had said, yeah, go ahead, deconstruct the characters or whatever. I wonder, it's just fun to speculate, where he might have taken the story, what direction it could have gone in.
No, yeah, it's definitely interesting to consider. And I would love for Hunter x Hunter to be the same. What will happen if Hunter x Hunter ever continues? God damn it. No, that was a joke. But anyway, back to the actual story. We got a bit of a scene with Yusuke and Keiko, where there's two panels where he's like, I'm a demon now. Demon royalty. And she's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And yeah, Yusuke basically says that he's going out away for a few years, giving his goodbye.
You also get the little, you get the interaction where Yusuke has his cigarette, but of course it was censored in the Viz version. But Keiko takes a puff of the cigarette and is just blah. How do you? Which is just it's interesting. It just shows symbolically that they live in two different worlds. They're not on the same page.
No, it's a good moment because she's just what the fuck? Yeah, she snatches, but it's good. Good interaction. They're fun.
Yeah, I just really like the pre Three Kings chapter like that, because again, it's Togashi being good with pacing and structuring his stuff, because before, it's just the fun downtime, the character interactions that Togashi does really well in Hunter x Hunter, and he's been good with that with Yu Yu Hakusho too, the just having little chapters in between to kind of, especially for a character like Keiko who can't really be involved in the action and the more the bulk of the arc. So these are kind of the moments where she gets to shine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's good. Because she's kind of not here for a lot of these last two arcs, because she was fun in the Dark Tournament with all the other relatives and friends watching. But yeah, oh well. But anyway, Mukuro and Yomi give their messages to Hiei and Kurama, who talk about. It's also kind of interesting how they are from the demon world, and we do get more of their histories with the demon world. And we see it later with Hiei and the family of snow women, and Kurama being partnered with Yomi. You almost have these different generations where Yomi is one of the younger ones compared to Mukuro and Raizen, but then Hiei is younger compared to Yomi and Kurama. So I don't know, it was neat.
This whole time, Hiei was basically just the edgy teenager inside us all.
Well, that's just true. There was a poll for favorite fights. So, did you have any thoughts on it, or do you even remember it? Because I can read it out because I'm there.
I will say I am proud of my fellow Jump voters, because we got where is it? What position did it get? 10th place in the top 10. Kurama versus Kaito. Jump readers, they've got good taste.
Yeah, no, that was a good one.
Actually, wasn't
because they also had the Amanuma, the game master, at 4th place.
Yes.
3rd place was Yusuke versus Toguro. You know what? I'll take it. I wish it was higher, but I'll take it. Like Hiei versus Booya and Kurama versus Karasu were higher, even though like I didn't like those fights as much, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, sure.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
like,
guessing
especially
it's like,
Hiei's was
Hiei and Kurama.
the dragon.
Yeah,
it was like his big Dragon of the Darkness flame attack. Like that was kind of all the fight was. But I mean, like, it's cool. Like,
I'm wondering when the anime aired for those relative to this, because the Hiei was getting the cool Akiyuki Shinbo stuff, and you've talked about Kurama's like aesthetic, so it's possible that anime popularity might have helped. And of course, these are popular characters, and they're cool. Like it's the fights are them doing cool shit. So even if I didn't like them as much, because I wasn't like. Because I maybe said it a bit weirdly on my server, but I did kind of have a realization because, like, I just generally attach myself easier to cute shit than cool shit. Like, not that I don't like cool shit, but it's not like if I were to order my preferences, I would definitely put cute above cool. Like, give me a cast of cute characters and I'd probably like them than just a cast of characters who happen to be cool. Like with One Piece, I don't like the coolness is there, but I also like it gets me in the emotions. It's funny. Like, it's not just that it's, cool, so to speak.
So what you're saying is if the fights had occurred as they actually did in these little chibi-fied versions for the poll, you would have liked them more.
Because they would have been adorable. But no. Just a thought I had, because I was thinking, like, why is it that I like the characters of Aikatsu Friends more than I do the characters of Yu Yu Hakusho, even though I'd call or at least Yusuke for sure better? Like... I'd say, like, there's, like, one interesting character in the entirety of the fucking, like, 300 plus episodes of Aikatsu I've watched. But I still like the cast overall more, and I realized, wait, duh, it's because they're fucking cute. So that was just the thought I had, and my take, I guess. Some other ones that placed, 5th place was Yusuke versus Hiei. Wait, where's 6th place? Did they misnumber them? Oh no, they did. They just put it. Oh, maybe I'm looking at it wrong. 6th place was Genkai versus Younger Toguro. 7th place was Kurama versus Toya, the ice guy. 8th place was Yusuke versus Jin. 9th place was Yusuke versus Sensui. And 10th place was Kurama versus Kaito. And then Yusuke versus Suzaku was the runner-up. So, which was interesting because that's a fight that would have happened quite a while ago, relatively speaking, like a couple years. So, relative to the poll. But anyway, they go to the temple to go to the demon world. Like I said, the spirit world is basically okay, bye. Kuwabara is pretty pissed. Because like he even makes an observation that he feels like, well, at least Sensui and Toguro had like integrity or ideals, like. They're just throwing away everything to go to Demon World,
Yeah, that was a good
so
line.
They can keep fighting. Yeah, because that's how he sees it, which isn't untrue of Yusuke. Like with Kurama and Hiei, like, it's a bit different. And of course, how it settles out, obviously, Kuwabara turns out, even if he's right about their reasons for going, how it shakes out is different.
I also like Hiei's little comeback. He's like, "When did you get so smart?" And then it's just the reaction. Oh! It's like that's what's happening. Kuwabara like biting his tongue, and it's just like flying into the air.
Yeah, because he's like so mad.
I didn't know what that was at first, but now I figured it out.
I didn't think about it either. But it's so funny because like he is like recognizing him, but in that it's also pissing Kuwabara off. Like, and I was gonna make a joke about like Kuwabara because Kuwabara's been reading books and studying.
Yeah,
that's how he got so smart. Also Yukina gives them tea, but it got cold because she's a nice woman. It's silly. But anyway, they go to Demon World. Yusuke meets Raizen. He tries to fight him because of course he does. And it doesn't work at all. And actually I'm looking and this art is kind of sloppy. So not one of Togashi's good weeks. Like there's some good panels, but it's also like
I know.
Yeah,
I
a little
know.
rough in spots.
Yusuke meeting Ryzen was one of like the specifics. Because
Yeah.
yeah, because Togashi in the afterword he talks about like how he did Karasu versus Kurama himself, Yusuke versus Sensui, and then the other one was when Yusuke meets Ryzen. Those were like the three that he. Well, technically he mentions four because also two shots. The one from way back with Kurama and Hiei.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah. So anyway, it starts out we get the individual like arcs for the years, like Hiei year 1, where we find out his backstory. He was abandoned at birth for being, cursed. And he also had a lot of like awareness and like because of I guess demon.
And like
heritage,
this how specific it is. Like he could hear everything before he was even out of the womb, and it's like what? How does he get this supernatural hearing ability? But it's fine.
So yeah, he's basically this really angry, edgy baby. Like he never stopped being an angry, edgy baby. It's just cute now.
Yes.
I don't know.
Especially like the little
also,
shot of him where he's like about to be tossed off the cliff or whatever, and it's just like, hey.
He's just like a little angry baby eye. And I was gonna say and also it turns out that he'd already exterminated all of them, which Yukina kind of doesn't even mind because she feels like their existence was sad.
Well, yeah, and there was I think the one line that really stood out to me was when Yukina mentions about how their means of survival are as cold and hard as ice. And she's like, is there even any point to survival at that stage? But Hiei kind of retorts that if you want disaster to befall them, like if you don't think that they should that way of living should survive, then you should take care of it yourself. Don't depend, as he says it, don't depend on the whims of a brother who may or may not even be alive. Which then Yukina
yes.
says you're right, which is interesting because
yes.
in this moment Hiei is basically saying slaughter them. Is that genocide because are they considered a group of people? I don't know, but in this case they're basically saying like, yes, murder is okay, go do it because they're bad people, which is interesting.
Well, and I guess because what one thing you made me think of is like how like the reasons they were like that was because they cut themselves off from everyone.
Yeah.
And that I only just realized kind of feeds into like one of the big overall things of the segregation, the separate human world and demon world.
Mm-hmm.
And here you have these characters who are deliberately segregating themselves, and for that they've become heartless. They've become nothing, So it's like a negative framing against people who are pro separation, so to speak. And I hadn't thought about that.
And in the context of Japanese
politics,
no, I'm kidding. I wouldn't be able to explore that anyway. I don't have enough knowledge. But
Shounen manga isn't political; it's just cool things happening. But yeah, it was an interesting conversation. And I like I said, I only just realized some things about it. See, and then the art is just so again just last chapter we had the weird Ryzen stuff, and then now we got the there's the fight with Shigure, and he's super detailed, and he's got piercings and scars, and it's like, why would you design a character this difficult to draw, Togashi? You're dying, and you're no, let's make it harder on myself. What are you doing, you fool?
I mean, at the very least, I guess he's not around for very long. So, but yeah, even then, it's like, oh my god.
Yeah. But he comments he beats him with he sacrifices his arm, and it's a cool fight.
Yeah, because he has this cool internal monologue sort of, which I guess it stood out more in the anime as wait, these characters had never been monologuing before. Why are they suddenly doing it now? But that's obviously just kind of how Togashi was telling the story by this point. And for the most, I think it works, even if it is not the way he'd been doing it before. But he had a very clear, I guess 2 distinct, goals he was striving for. But once he kind of achieved those, he was kind of just, he talked about how he was always fighting to try to survive. But at this point, it didn't matter how he won, so long as he won. But then obviously Mukuro was like, no, you're not dying. I empathize with you or something.
How did I not think about this? Hiei's backstory ties pretty interestingly into the first arc because he's a character who, has trust issues because his mom gave birth to him and threw him off a fucking cliff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't think about that.
It's
so, and it makes sense. Like, he was born alone, so when he happened to make bonds, like especially with Kurama, who like I'm gone, bye. Like, yeah, I'll never trust anyone. Like, and then, but baby edgy boy, sad lonely edgy boy.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. This is another one of those things that, like, especially now that I had gone through the story before, like, when I watched it the first time, I wouldn't have had much perspective on how it ties into everything else, but, like, going through it again and considering this in mind, whether it's something Togashi had planned from the start or whether it's kind of just something he came up with on the fly, it fits in really well. And it, like you just said, it contextualizes some things that he did in earlier arcs very well. It is trust issues and stuff. It's a good backstory. He's a good edgy boy. I love him.
A couple other things like I wrote down was after he defeats Shigure, he like sort of has a moment where he's like not bad, like he's recognizing his opponent, and he says like the old me wouldn't have said that. And also I like how Mukuro says like, oh yeah, I have 77 elite lieutenants. There's no reason for the number. I just think it's cool.
Yeah.
I just thought that was funny. Oh yeah, and I didn't notice it until just now. Well, because like I thought it was weird that Shigure came back, even though like he got his head lopped, like half of his head lopped off. But then I'm looking at this panel of Hiei in the sort of like healing, Star Wars Dragon Ball chamber kind of thing. But Shigure is there. It looks like he's there on the side, also being healed up.
Oh,
so,
I didn't even notice that. Yeah, because I thought it was funny that Togashi just brought the character. He mentioned the character. He name dropped the character later. Even though it's just like, but when did he? But you're just gonna bring him back without showing him? Okay.
Yeah, no, but no, he was right there the whole time, so that was my bad.
Hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, and it's also interesting that Mukuro, like, because the way she sort of did it was this kind of like, oh yeah, I have to have 77 people, so one has to kill one.
She had said that it was like a fight for their lives.
Yeah, but then she brought them both back. And one thing she said was that I thought was weird was like how like you're not strong enough to seek death yet, and I'm like, I don't know. Seems like not sure about that line. I'm not sure how it like factors into her character with the little backstory chapter we get of her. So I don't know. I just thought that was a weird like the strength to kill yourself. I was like, I don't like the way that's framed when I put it like that. So, yeah. Anyway, then we get Kurama's. So yeah, his mom got married and went overseas, so he didn't have to worry so much.
Yeah, and I like how he like somehow wires his phone at the house to go through to the demon world. It's just, it's magic. Amazing.
Don't think about it. Just. And then he also introduces power levels, I guess mostly for just the last arc to, here's how strong the demons are.
Power levels, yay! I mean, like, I guess it's, it's just like a shorthand, like, here is our strength, very numerically calculated scientifically. That's really the only thing I can think of it at that point, is it's just like it's a quick shorthand.
It's just,
especially
it's just so he doesn't have to
thinking like the conditions that Togashi was operating under. It might have just been the easiest thing to do, is just like have it be that shorthand, because people get it. People know power levels. People have read Dragon Ball.
Because it is also kind of like, I guess what I would point, it's because he's not just introducing one character's power, he's introducing the power of a bunch of characters. Like there's 6 in this first one, there's 6 characters that he reveals as the mains, and they're seconds. And and of course this becomes a frame of reference for the rest of the arc. So it's mostly just like, yeah, it's just a shorthand for, because the thing with like the vague power levels, like again, there's a moment in the Chimera Ant where a character, one of the strongest human characters sees one of the antagonists and is like, wow, yeah, I'm not that strong right now. There's no power levels, but like there's we understand the relative strength based on, the reactions of the characters, where this is like not a scene where that would have worked, because, like they're just looking at like the objective, like, yeah, here's how this strong this character is, And because the whole point is to hear like here's the value of these characters in regards to their fighting strength, which of course goes into what Kurama then does, because he's like, yeah, I can get it's like 6 demons with over this level of power by the end of and then he does, because so yeah.
I also oh, sorry, finish your thought.
I was just gonna say I don't mind power. Like, again, I don't intrinsically mind power levels. I might do a whole video on power levels and talking about like what they offer and what they can do, because I did find a series that I thought was interesting about it. But I don't mind. Like, I don't see power levels go like, ew, the shonen formula is bad. I want the modern shonen that refine the formula. Anyway, you're going to say something.
Oh, yes. I just wanted to comment on how it was very important that Togashi bring Kaito back, just very briefly, because he's an important character, damn it. But no, he's like really the only character who could kind of like, I guess, play off of Kurama, as far as like, oh, your grades have dropped. And the quickest way is just like, Kaito was his number 2, but Kaito surpasses him because he's distracted. He's a good boy, and he showed up. He's a good jobber character, but he's good.
But we also get we get some Kurama backstory where he was partner with Yomi. Turned out that Kurama put a hit out on Yomi, and the guy stole Yomi's sight, and then.
For how little screen time he gets, I do think Yomi is a pretty interesting character, because I mean, I guess the way he kind of manipulates Kurama could indicate that he holds something of a grudge, like he feels like he's owed something. But he's also not like, yo, you took my eyes. I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna take your eyes or anything. Like he's very, very chill about it. Like he might have the sort of like undercurrent of like lies and the biting, sort of more vengeful, I guess. But it's a very like light vengeance. Sort of like I don't know. He's very diplomatic, or I don't know. I don't know what the word is.
Well,
I'm
I guess
looking for.
like because I mean, Kurama ordered the assassin to deal with Yomi. What happened from there was because the assassin, like we see him, his body is rotting. He's been tortured. Like he's again fucked up way worse than Kurama. Like nothing happened to Kurama, relatively speaking. So, like, all of his vengeance went on this guy, even though, it was Kurama who sent him after him. But, like...
Oh, yeah, I guess that's true. So I guess he kind of got it out of his system. Because, like, he was not very merciful with that guy.
Yeah. But, with Kurama, he's, like, he's focusing on controlling him. Because, also, Kurama's useful. Like, this is a guy who was on Yomi's level back then. Now Yomi is literally like the second strongest demon in the entire demon world, like the second only to Mukuro, who's a superhuman, a super demon who's been around for ages, and like who and Raizen's like the third strongest, and he's like starving himself, so he's a good like 200,000 under their strength levels. So it's So Kurama, and like he quickly proves his worth as someone who can be much stronger than basically anyone. Because that's the thing, is these 3 demons are way like what the 4th strongest demon was only like 87,000, like not even 100,000 compared to like 1.5 million that the top is. So it's like there's just such a huge, like Kurama even says like, everyone after the main 3 is basically worthless.
Yeah.
And Kurama even, like, the characters from the human world who've had this, like, real drive to fight, or, the demons who fought in the Dark Tournament, they're the ones who very quickly, at least in some part, like, are able to shrink the gap that's been so wide for so long, So Kurama's basically more worth something than being dead to Yomi. So even if he does have the anger, there's, like, reasons to keep him alive, and, he does also respect Kurama, like, as a former ally and his intelligence and stuff, so... But yeah, it just kind of, like, it doesn't get a resolution, if there was going to be one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was nice to see the Dark Tournament guys again.
Oh yeah, one of my favorite parts, regarding those characters was the gag where they're, like, speaking to each other through the the cards because they can't talk because they don't want to be overheard by Yomi's ability.
Yes, the bugs, I believe. Right. Oh no, that's right, because he hears. Duh.
Yeah. So like they're talking on the cards, which, especially in the context of manga, it's also interesting because that text would be there anyway.
Right.
So having the characters do that as opposed to just speaking it. And then, of course, you have the joke, like, the one character puts up the ellipses, and it's like, no, you don't have to do that. Even though, like, for a manga, they would write the ellipses there.
Exactly, but it's like a metatextual joke because, like, yeah, you're right, he would have to put that there, and then... but it's like, he's also wasting paper.
Yeah. I mean, like, in the anime, it's still a funny gag, but it doesn't have the same, like, meta aspect to it that you just pointed out.
Yeah, no, you're right. Anyway, also, so there's a moment, it was a little thing, but so we go to Yusuke after, or were we done with the Kurama stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So there was a thing with Yusuke, and it opens up with him fighting the 4 bald, strongest minions of Raizen, and I thought it was interesting because when he was fighting Sensui specifically mentioned that Yusuke was bad with attack. He was used to one-on-one fights and bad with attacks from multiple angles. Yet this one opened with Yusuke dealing with attacks from multiple angles. So I was like, character development.
Yay!
Just a little thing, but just a little detail that I like because Yusuke's like he's fighting. He wants to get stronger and fight and have good fights, and here he is doing better.
I hadn't even considered that actually. That's cool.
Yeah. Not a major thing, especially because, obviously it goes back into one-on-one fights, but it's just a little detail. Anyway, then we get a pretty big Yusuke moment between Yusuke and Raizen. Because Raizen's basically, like, feeling his hunger the strongest because, he's basically close to death. And Yusuke's even like, I'll let you eat people so you don't waste away and die. Like, he's willing to sacrifice people for Raizen's sake, and of course, so he could actually have the fight he wants, at least on some level. And then we get Raizen's backstory, and with, including, the human ancestor of Yusuke is like, what a relationship.
Yeah. It's really interesting, with regards to the whole, like, people being like food for demons or whatever. Here we have like medicinal cannibalism, essentially. Like,
humans who eat parts of they eat dead humans to help living humans.
Because it's like to build up an immunity or whatever. And so as she describes, like, her body is basically just like poison. So like if Raizen, like, ate her like she would, or like he would with other humans, then he's basically killing himself because poison.
Yep, and this somehow, like, infatuates him, and he ends up, like, siring a child with her that, Yusuke's next ancestor, so...
I liked how the fan translation just put it, like, he put the moves on her.
Yeah, because he basically just, like, where he was like, she's the one.
What else do you do at that point?
It's such a, like, it's just so wild. It's like, damn, they're fucked up, but they're perfect for each other. They both eat people. But of course, because, again, he's guys, I guess, kind of like Kurama in a sense. Long hair, I don't know. But also, he came to love a human, and that, because Kurama's one of all the demons, he's definitely one of the ones who's most sympathetic towards humans. And Raizen outright said, I'm not eating any humans, even if I starve to death. And,
I'm glad you actually elaborated on that, because when you just said long hair, I'm like, what? I was like, how are they similar? But no, that makes sense.
That was part of that was the joke. Yeah, that's the only, I was just gonna stop there. No. But anyway, but yeah, like, Raizen as a demon is able to put aside his urges and do, and I feel like that kind of changes Yusuke, because now that Yusuke becomes the boss, he's able to he, at this point he stops saying like, maybe I should sacrifice humans so that I could have a better fight. Maybe the fate of the world doesn't matter, like, he basically moves beyond Sensui's words. Sensui said it like it was some kind of absolute, but it ultimately becomes a choice. one that Yusuke is satisfied with, and one that in turn changes the demon world. Because I guess did you feel it was well, you've already watched it, so but just reading the manga, did you think it was kind of anticlimactic? Because it's I think I saw some people in the comments where it's it's building up to this major war, and then it just it ends up in a tournament and you don't even see the end of the tournament.
Well, the thing about the only real problem I have with this is the fact that it does just cut off, because I think the tournament aspect of it is really interesting.
Yeah, and like I said, it makes sense with Yusuke's character. This was one thing I especially noticing in Dark Tournament. I was realizing this is kind of what it was building to, where Yusuke's conflict of wanting to enjoy a fight and not enjoying fights that had high stakes, but enjoying the cool ones, and then of course his change with in Chapter Black, and it kind of coming going, yeah.
And it's
so it makes sense, because he turns, that's what happens, a conflict that would have been massive, bloody, and resulted in a lot of death becomes tame and reasonable and fun.
Yeah.
In the form of a tournament. So, even if it is anticlimactic, I do think it makes, thematic sense in regards to Yusuke's character arc, Does that, oh my god, I just know...
See, I don't know if I'd even call it anticlimactic. I think it works really well. I think the fact that it just becomes a tournament, I think that's a huge strength for this arc, is the way that
interesting.
Because, it's not... I guess it could have been building to, a typical sort of shonen war arc, but that doesn't... I don't know. This just feels so much more interesting for me, at least in the context of YuYu Hakusho.
Okay, yeah. It's subversive.
Well, no, it's not even by the way of being subversive. I just mean, the way... I don't know, just the way Togashi does his stuff. And, I don't know, it's also interesting... It does
happen pretty naturally, so...
in the context of, it being, a war between nations and stuff, there is, an interesting... sort of political thing you could read into that, because Yusuke just kind of cuts through all of that. He doesn't care about, and in a way, this makes me think of stuff that happens in the election arc of Hunter x Hunter in certain ways. There's.
See, I was gonna mention Chapter Black, because I just think about how the characters in Chapter Black have these territories that instill these systems, and that holds Yusuke back, because he's just a character who likes freeform fighting. And so here in this demon world, you have these factions, and if one of these three powers falls, the other two,
Yeah, and then Yusuke just says, no, let's just everybody be individuals, and...
Right, he removes the system, because that's not something, it's too complicated for him, and he's just a kid.
Yusuke, anarchist, confirmed.
In its place, he gives... and in its place, it's just fighting. Just fight. Just have, because that's something that, and he connects with the demons with, too, because even, Yomi is, because he's the most calculated. Mukuro is just definitely a battle hungry kind of character. She just wanted things to stay the same. Just this, she was fine with this sort of stagnancy where just demons at the standoff. Ryzen at least didn't want human death. But Yomi was wanted to take over, and yet by the end of it, his organization disbands and he's just fighting alongside everything else. It puts everyone at the same level.
Yeah,
and. It's neat.
And it's another just one of those Yusuke moments where it seems like he's doing something kind of dumb and reckless, but it ends up being brilliant, because it completely throws off Yomi's plan, because he's oh, I've got these bugs set up to feed Mukuro misinformation, and then I'm going to kill Yusuke, and I'm going to kill all these people here, and they won't be a problem for me. But it completely flips that on its head, because he's I don't even know how to deal with this.
I have contingencies for everything except that. But anyway, I was gonna say, because I just noticed there's a big mobile centipede fortress that at one point I just noticed, because it has a big V2 on its forehead. That's a Kamen Rider reference. In fact, the whole thing is a Kamen Rider reference, because I'm seeing it's similar to the mask. I just because I might do a video on this at some point, because tokusatsu is super important in influencing anime and manga properties.
Yeah.
And here's Togashi has included several reference, just in Yu Hakusho there was the in the Dark Tournament there was the demon rangers, who are basically they were a sentai a demon sentai group, and of course in the level E it's even more obvious with the kids. And yeah, now here's a big Kamen Rider reference. So it's like, it's just, and this is just one author. Like, I'm, there's One Piece has Germa, who are another giant Super Sentai reference, and in Dressrosa, when Luffy goes into the Coliseum, there are 3 helmets. And I only just noticed this because Grant has been reading through and he got to Dressrosa, and someone pointed out that there are 3 helmets. One of them looks like Kamen Rider, one of them looks like a Super Sentai visor, and one of them looks like Ultraman. And I'm like, Oda, that's sneaky.
GG.
So just like there's a lot of references everywhere. Like Bleach has there was the one of Vizard was like a Kamen Rider reference. Like, it's a very, it's a big deal. And I just wanted to, because I feel like AniTube doesn't pay attention to Toku very much at all, even though they barely pay attention to manga, let alone Toku or visual novels, which are also like really, especially if you're watching an adaptation of one of those, like the medium matters to what it was and why the decisions. Anyway, but yeah, Yomi's army breaks down because obviously like Kurama happened to fill it with people who are cool with Yusuke, and ultimately
that, and also he was like rolling through fear, and so once the stakes kind of once other like high level fighters get involved, they're like, oh no, I'm out, we're not doing this. And I think it's really interesting
because Mukuro just like disband.
See,
goodbye.
And here's another detail which I could see people having problems with for very understandable reasons, and yet I think it's kind of cool. You have these characters just kind of show up out of nowhere, but they are, you even have Yomi being like, this is impossible. Each one is as strong as me, maybe more, which.
I like that, because like the characters involved in the system, there's only the 3 really strong ones, but then there's these guys who just like lived way outside of the system and who are just fucking crazy powerful, and it's like, what? Like, it's reasonable as to like how they could just show up and be this strong, based on just the setting.
Yeah, and it's also,
so
it's indicative of like the kind of people they are, that they never cared about, the fighting, the infighting between the 3 different nations. They kind of just went off and did their own thing, and so it was only now that they kind of show up.
Because they were strong enough, like they could exactly. And then, but now that this thing that appeals to them shows, of course they're gonna show up. So it was, I liked it. But anyway, we start to build into the actual tournament. And because when more strong people, when those guys come in, there's like this kind of like other demons start getting, because I might have a chance if all the other like strong guys like take each other out.
That's another thing that I think is really cool, the way that tournament is structured, because in like a typical tournament format, it's, or at least as far as a typical narrative tournament format, you build up to the big climactic fight. But with this one, like a major point of it is that people could bump into each other anywhere. So like, Yusuke has his fight with Yomi, not even in the final. Like, a lot of the big players get knocked out in the quarterfinals, and by the end, it's just like, who won the tournament? Who are these people?
Right, complete nobodies.
And, like, I could see why people would take issue with that. I could see why that might feel unsatisfying. But for some reason, to me, I feel it works, and I don't know, maybe I don't quite know how to explain it well. I'm still thinking about it. But it's something that even when I watched the anime way back, as in last year, even when I watched the anime last year, I thought that was another cool thing I liked, even if I can't explain it in the most convincing way.
Yeah, well, the way it unfolds is definitely like it builds up to it, and it happens more or less organically. Like, and yeah, it's cool. It does just kind of cut off, but there's moments in there, like you get the fights, you get a few fights. Like, what I thought was interesting is how like there's this whole thing where it's like, you either force your opponent to surrender or cut off their head, and ultimately they just like, Yusuke even says like, why take the option to kill? Like, and so they just sort of like, because
like the big point of it is that you can come back, you can try again. Like, losing does not have to be the end. Because the way it is kind of like a new way of like not like, this is not the government, but this is like the way that it's determined. Because like, if you lose and you just give up, you're not gonna. It's it's very Shounen. You're not gonna get another shot. But if you accept the loss now and try to improve and try to come back next time, there will be a next time. So you can try again and possibly win then.
Yeah, right. And you just have to live like there's some dissatisfaction from like Hiei, who's like, wow, I don't like these rules. You know, we better wait until the rules change so that we can or in the next tournament so we can fight and potentially see the rules changed, you know? Like I guess that's because it's such a simple, like it turns the world into one where it's purely about like, you know, like not just strength, because there's also like the guy talks about how luck is important too. You know, endurance, like, but because it's qualities that everyone has. So, you know, if you're compare that to an actual political system where you need like education and you know, time and money, like things that not everyone has access to. Where here it's just like, yeah, you exercise and learn to fight, and you can potentially change the world. Like it changes it to a very pure and simple system.
Yeah, so it's very much so where like the political power is determined by like is determined by the physical power, not even necessarily, because there's a degree of luck involved as well, just as far as how the brackets get set up, where like the big players could fight in the first round and wear each other out, and then they get beaten by someone not as strong but who had, you know, an easier opponent or whatever. So it's definitely like a very literal like turning power into power thing. But it's also not quite that simple.
Right.
Even then, it's just like a willingness to try is rewarded in some capacity, or can be rewarded.
Yes, it is very shonen when you put it like that. It is true, and it's cool. But anyway, I believe, Yusuke and Yomi starts, and then that's where it cuts off, like literally mid-fight, so you're like...
That's obviously the problem I have with it, is that it doesn't finish... Like, it does just stop.
Because, like, even... because, like, you know, Yomi's talking about how, like, this is new for me, and he's, like, you know, he's liking it. He's liking doing something that's more... You know, because, like, you know, he's a very cold and calculating kind of person. Like, he even, like, bullies his child into surrendering. Like, that's not going to be traumatic for the poor kid at all. But then he's like, no, I like this. I've never tried to block a punch with my face before. He basically says that. I'm not even exaggerating. Yeah.
I wish that was the actual line.
That would have been great. Yeah. But yeah, it just stops sadly, and then like we see Kuwabara at school, and then we just kind of get the whole fight like after the fact. Like he's just like, oh yeah, this happens.
Yeah, this happens, and this happens, and this happens. Okay, so now we get to talk about how the anime did it. So
yeah, I'm curious.
In the anime, even before, they do kind of pad things out a little bit with like minor characters getting moments on screen to do stuff. And so what it all ends up building to is like one by one, you see like the supporting characters try their hardest to fight and win, but they ultimately come up short. And so like, you know, Kurama loses, Hiei loses, all the guys from the Dark Tournament lose. And so then it gets to Yusuke, who has this moment where he kind of has to like question, you know, like why is he fighting? Like, what is he just fighting for fighting's sake? Like, what is that leading to? And unfortunately, I don't remember off the top of my head quite how everything resolves, because obviously he does lose. But I think the whole point is that, you know, there's definitely a sense of build up with all these characters, you know, trying and losing, but the chance to try again. And so it is built up to the fight with Yusuke better, whereas like the manga, the characters do lose, and some of their fights are showcased, but it's not, you know, like they're the like two gags with the characters losing to
Chu and the kid losing to women, who they end up getting involved with later,
which I mean I think it's a funny joke, and like the anime keeps it in too. But for, you know, the other characters having the more, I guess, like, thematically driven, you know, trying hard in the fights, and, you know, how that connects to Yusuke in the end. See, that's the thing with, and even then, obviously with how kind of the manga wraps it up, there's only so much that the anime is able to do with it, and I wouldn't even necessarily say that the anime gives the most cathartic ending of this arc either. even if it does flesh some things out more, I might even want to go back to it and kind of reevaluate it now that we've kind of discussed it a little more, and I have even more perspective on how the manga did it.
On what? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, like, my overall stance on Three Kings is that it has a lot of interesting concepts, maybe too much for the amount of time. Actually, definitely too much for the time it actually gets.
When you say it like that, it feels like Togashi's like, the series is ending. You know, he's not in a good state. We don't know. You know, obviously we don't know how it actually was, but like, you know, is he? We don't like. He might not, know whether he's gonna come back to manga or not. Like, even though he does have more stories to tell and more ideas, so he just like kind of shoves as much as he can in there, and then so like you said, it's a little, quite a bit.
I think it's I think there's a degree to which it should be commended for how much a lot of this works in the time it is given, and how a lot of these elements. I mean, like, I guess there is a degree to which, like, Yomi kind of going from this calculating character to, reigniting this desire to fight that he had back in his old days. Maybe there's a degree to which, like, Yomi's character exploring different ideas and they don't necessarily tie together well or, as completely as they could have. Because for some of the, with the whole discussion of, like, like the eating humans and whatever, and how demons can coexist with humanity, but then also exploring the sort of fighting aspect of that, and what does it mean to fight, and what are people fighting for, which is another big question that gets asked in this arc, especially when you consider like Hiei's character arc, where he kind of he doesn't have a purpose anymore, and he has to kind of like find what more he's going for, find something else to live for. And maybe they don't tie together in the best way, but in saying all of that, I still, obviously Dark Tournament has Yusuke versus Toguro, which is admittedly a higher high than I think anything that exists in this arc individually, and it's a very strong conclusion. But I'd probably say I think this pretty much only confirms that I still like this arc more than Dark Tournament. So this is my second favorite arc in the series.
Okay, interesting, because we get to the part that is kind of iffy. Because I did spoil it before. But as we find out, basically Enma was doing some shady shit. He was literally brainwashing demons and having them released to harm humans to, like, justify the barrier that was keeping the demons in the demon world.
Okay, yeah, I guess this is the part that I could see feeling like a slap in the face, kind of, because it is.
Because, like,
it's a lot.
So I like the ideas of, like I said, the segregation and the human demon world, but some of the things specifically said here, like, not like, okay, here's how I might put it in the harshest way. It's Togashi taking his world building and just throwing it in the trash.
Yeah, like, I get that. I see that.
It not only does it I can't even say it recontextualizes a whole lot. It just straight up contradicts. Literally a few chapters ago, we got Ryzen. Like, if it was just a spirit world framing this narrative, that's one thing. But Ryzen was saying the exact same things. He was there. He was talking about how, like, oh yeah, before the spirit barrier, there was a lot of chaos. There were demons in the human world. He was one of the demons eating people, but he did not mention, like, oh yeah, we were brainwashed. Or like, yeah, humans asked me to eat people. No, that was not anything he was saying. That's what we're supposed to just accept as, like, oh, this was most of what was happening in that time.
Well, I know it was described as, like, the numbers were fabricated, so it wasn't necessarily that it wasn't happening, but that, like, the numbers were definitely bloated to push more of an agenda in this case, I guess, for the spirit world.
Yeah, and this specific argument they mentioned was that, like, oh yeah, human on human violence was more common than demon on human, which is also a very familiar argument I've heard regarding Black Lives Matter. So when I read that, I was just kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think to me this feels like such an afterthought that I didn't really give it that much thought. But I mean, the points you're bringing up are valid, and I definitely get where you're coming from.
There's one part that I think is interesting. Like, this honestly is why I would have liked to see both Three Kings and to sort of like post Three Kings, like, world adjusting arc, like, be fleshed out, because, like, yeah, there's ideas here But okay, go ignore even forgetting Ryzen. What about Suzaku? Was he one of these brainwashed demons? Was he because there is a part I like where Kurama and Yusuke are like thinking because they were complicit in this sort of systemic segregation and this very broadly painted narrative, and he's because he even said I even do like how the fan translation puts it, where it's like, I wonder if any of them are people that I caught. He doesn't call them demons, he calls them beings.
Yeah.
And he's thinking because he was, there were basically innocent demons that he was complicit in their subjugation and execution, and that's incredibly uncomfortable thought. And Kurama just says I guess they use our Nen Show meme of don't think about it, don't think about it, don't think about it. And that's an interesting little moment. And again, seeing some of these things expand and explored upon are more, but it's just it feels, and I know why I gave the series a 4. Because, remember, I was reading, the Viz translation first, which, of course, had, the stuff in the Dark Tournament where the demons were we're not allowed to be bad. We have to be good to get into the Dark Tournament.
This is really interesting because I consider your stance on Fairy Tail before, where it's it's the fan translation that gave me these opinions, but now it's it was the official translation that gave me this take.
It's so weird, because, because the official translation of Fairy Tail is actually really good, where the official translation of YuYu Hakusho came out a decade or a few years before, so it's kind of not, and it's Viz, so at the time period, so it's kind of not that good. It is kind of, it is pretty funny though, and because because I think these sort of negative feelings, and of course I wasn't noticing nearly as much interesting or good about the positive parts like Chapter Black or Toguro. I really don't remember my feelings on those from back when I read it 6 years ago or so. I remember my negative feelings about again the world building being thrown in the trash. So it's I understand why I gave the manga a 4 rereading this, because it is again interesting ideas are being brought up, but they're not necessarily being explored in a really
it does make me wonder, because again this manga just kind of, Togashi had an ultimatum that he was going to end it, and so it makes me wonder, because the barrier coming down feels like a natural conclusion for this story, but I wonder if Togashi might have had other ideas to actually explore this whole spirit world being corrupt and yada yada yada. But because things kind of just ended where they did, if this might have just been his slapdash way of throwing it there, maybe he had more to think of with it, but he just didn't have the energy to do it.
I think he did, because, so one thing I was going to spoil about Level E is that it ends in a very similar way, where there's a time skip and alien and human, humans become aware of the aliens and they're able to coexist, sort of, so very similar in how demons and humans are able to coexist in Yu Yu Hakusho. But anyway, Jellicock Respawn mentioned something interesting where he pointed out how Sensui's only goal was to bring down the barrier, basically, because and he definitely, or at least one of his personalities wanted humans and wanted them all dead, and believed that taking down the barrier would be help with that, but ultimately his sort of his feelings on humans and or on humans at least are wrong, and the spirit world's feelings on demons are wrong, because ultimately what happens is coexistence. Neither are so bad that they aren't able to get along with each other and coexist. Obviously there's, and that's the thing, because there is humans have a history with demon subjugation and torture and stuff. That's not going to magically go away. But then they also mention Hiei finds a human, and they're some humans just end up in the demon world to get eaten, So obviously even if some of the demons, the numbers were inflated, there are still demons who do fucked up shit to humans, and even though again I feel the whole brainwashing thing just throws so much in flux, I'm just head hurting trying to because I would definitely like to see a full series examining this sort of how it evolves from and dealing with the whole culture and clashing, and I don't know, but it's interesting. Could it have been handled better? Probably. But it is interesting for what it is.
Yeah, like I said, it honestly feels like a pretty big afterthought, which is why I never even really considered the negative implications of it. More because it's less that like the means to the end are good, but it's more that like the end itself feels natural, like feels like that's where the story would go.
Yeah.
And because it's an afterthought, I never really thought about
also
the the actual like the means and the way it's explained and justified.
And I guess also like how they, because they kind of like, it is kind of, because there's like the humans are worse than demons thing, which is like, it ends as kind of like a joke to a weird mystery chapter where like, oh, these demon handprints are appearing for no reason, and of course Yusuke is kind of a shit, and Kurama actually is the demon that was helping. So, but also the editor's like, wait, Yusuke's a demon too, and like, cause they definitely focus more, like, it also feels like the way they frame the whole human demon thing is like, it's only humans who are bad, like, oh, it's humans who are, like, it's like Spirit World who brainwashed demons and humans who told demons to go kill other humans, like, it does end in a way where they're equal and coexisting, but like, it's also saying like, oh yeah, humans are bad, so it's like, because I don't think that's true, given like it's just weird, that's just where like not maybe like an overwhelming amount of the focus is at the human, because like those humans are the ones reading the story, I guess, and demons aren't real. But I don't know, so it's just weird. I don't, yeah, like, and like I said, I think it's a questionable narrative decision to throw some of the world building out in the trash like that, because that's what it feels like. Even if, like, again, this is a story I'd love to see, and Yu Hakusho would have been a great way to explore it, because we know these characters. But yeah, Togashi didn't, he wasn't able to, and he wanted to end the story, so I get it, but oh well, I think I've done.
Yeah, that definitely did give me more of a perspective on why people might not like Three Kings as much.
Yeah, because like honestly, after reading it like freshly, I think I have it at my least favorite arc, but after discussing it, I think I'd put it like at least above Genkai Selection and Mei's Castle. Like, I don't know about how it ranks with Spirit Detective and Dark Tournament, even though we have arc rankings in literally like 20 minutes. Probably more than that, but yeah, so I don't know. Talking about the arc, I feel better about it, even if there's like one really glaring issue that's kind of frustrating in a few ways.
Yeah, I guess
anyway.
I kind of exist in like a weird spot where some people are able to do this with certain series where there's just like one aspect, like in this case it's so easy to just kind of ignore, and I can see like the good in Yu Yu Hakusho, and which is not like, I acknowledge that you described it as kind of just throwing the world building in the trash, and I definitely get that. I guess I'll just ignore it.
Don't think about it. Be like Yusuke and Kurama. Don't think about it.
And so now I definitely can't criticize people who might, issues I have with like Fairy Tail, for example. I definitely can't criticize them for not thinking about it, because I'm not thinking about Yu Yu Hakusho. We spent how many hours on this podcast thinking about Yu Yu Hakusho, but it turns out I was never thinking about it.
Damn. I mean, you say like, I thought you were going to comment on the length, because I'm pretty sure like minutes per chapter, like this is definitely like the longest one we've done, I think. Like, holy shit. I was gonna ask, so what did the anime, like, did the anime include this at all? Or
I think it was there, because like the barrier came down, and I remember that being a plot point. But
I guess I
don't remember how.
Yeah. What about like how the human demon relations before the barrier, like how is that painted? Is what my real question is, because that's specifically what I take. Like, I'm like, I don't like that.
I honestly couldn't tell you. I don't remember.
Okay. Yeah, because I brought it up on my server, and some people, like, apparently it was not in the anime, so, or not, at least maybe not, like
maybe the barrier came down, stuff. But they framed it differently.
Down. Right.
Comments, save us.
Or, like, they just talked, they didn't go into detail, basically, because I guess that's what I don't, like, Enma doing shady shit to justify having the barrier up, that makes sense. The specific shady shit and how that, could be applied to, like, again, an earlier character's account doesn't account for that, like, even though he literally just explained himself a couple of chapters ago. Like, it's weird, and just I don't know, I think I'm about done talking with it. Anyway, next up is Mukuro's backstory, which is some of the most fucked up shit. Like, we don't see it, but we hear it. We get text.
And this was in Shounen Jump. What?
Yeah. like there's been like Chainsaw Man has had some shit, but like not quite anything on this level. And that's just the example, the first example that jumped to my mind. I'm sure there's other dark shit in Jump, but yeah.
I love how in the fan translation there was even like a note. It's like anime Mukuro has nothing on manga Mukuro. Watch this shit. It's just like, okay. I mean, I agree. I love the resolution to this though.
It's horrifying, but satisfying. Like, how do you feel bad about this?
Yeah, like it's a very dark sort of like it's a dark positive. Is it even could you even call it positivity? I don't know, but it's like it's a very dark catharsis.
Mukuro was I guess you could also call it like I didn't even think about the comparison, because here you have Mukuro with a parent figure, someone who had her from her childhood, like, possessing her as an object. We're not saying anything directly because Jesus Christ, like, we know, everyone who's read it knows. I don't want to say it. But like, so in yet like, but she has some like, she can't do anything about him because she has those positive feelings, or that turned out to have been like brainwashing, or mind, a sort of like fake false memories implanted. So, but she, so all she could do is sort of like be alone about it. Like there was even like, one of her minions asked about it before, and she just fucking killed them. Like, why you seem down? Why? And yeah, but because I just realized like Hiei, the one who sort like, again, they're reflections of each other. They're both had these really bad parental issues. Hiei didn't have the positive, so he was able to just deal with it, and then kind of what he has to do at the end of the series is just find something else to live for. And in doing so, he made these other connections where Mukuro is still alone, because he specifically helps Mukuro with a plant he got from Karama. Like, he's able to come to the solution because of friends, allies, and so he sort of forces himself into Mukuro's situation. But he's able to resolve it because of the connections he made, where Mukuro would have just been brooding alone for the rest of her life, if not for Hiei being nosy. And yeah, it's super fucked up, but
yeah, and then the way it ends, where it's just the last panel of him saying happy birthday. I
love that line. It's so good.
Yes.
See, it's interesting because I read it, but I only thought about how like all of Hiei's character stuff really like feeds into his overall arc, and it's the contrast with Mukuro, it's good.
And it's a very Hiei move to put this character in a position where it's like, hey, you can mutilate them as much as you want, just go for
kill
it,
them,
which in a way it's getting, I guess, payback for what had been done to her. But it's also like
justice, because
looking at it from like a Shonen Jump perspective, where it's like the optimism and stuff, and characters can redeem themselves or whatever. This is not that. Hiei is not that, and this character is not that, and this is a very Hiei solution.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to point out is how he kind of flips the tables, because Mukuro was an object to this guy from her birth until she freed herself by, making herself without, she poured the acid on herself. So Hiei makes him into an object for her.
I understand why people ship these two now. Like, I get it. Because they have, like, the similar, they have similar-ish backstories, and especially, like, the more specifics in this interaction. And again, happy birthday. It's just, oh my god.
He's such a good boy.
He's so good.
So I'm guessing the anime kept, like, what did the anime keep here? Because I know they did not go into Mukuro's, that's what the fan translation says.
No, the anime did not go into that part of the backstory. So, like, this scene never happened in the anime. Yeah. I don't even remember how the anime concluded it. It's possible that this just wasn't really elaborated on, and it's just more like they had, because like even without this, we knew that they had some sort of a bond.
Viz undercut it, right? I remember seeing in the tweet comparison thread the Viz they undercut some of the specifics of it, but it does still kind of there's only so much you can censor this. Like, Yeah.
You know, the fact that like he was turned into an object and is basically like, hey, he'll heal because of this plant. So you know, there is a degree to which like the torture is still implied, but it's like very, you know, vague language as you would expect Viz to censor it. But it's in a way that like it, you know, it hints at what is happening, but it is very vague.
Okay, yeah.
Because it's like, oh, you know, instead of saying like you mutilate him as much as you want, it's like you could say like do what you wish or whatever, or you know, something to that effect. I don't remember exactly what it was.
Yeah, no.
You know, a very way of toning it down and taming it, but again, there's only so much you can do to remove the implications.
No, yeah, like. Sorry, I was just reminded because, you know, My Hero Academia fans, I'm glad they enjoyed their series, but apparently there was something that happened recently I haven't read, but they're like, whoa, this is the darkest shit in Shonen Jump. And I'm like, no fucking way. Well, because apparently I heard a funny response to that, because, yeah, Chainsaw Man is going in the same magazine right now, and someone pointed out, like, yeah, this isn't even the darkest stuff that happened in Shonen Jump this week. And I'm like, yeah, that seems more accurate. Because, you know, like I said, I'm glad My Hero Academia fans like their manga, but, like, a lot of them obviously haven't read other manga. Or at least not a lot, so they say stuff like that.
I'll be interested for us to get to My Hero Academia, because it's definitely one of those stories that's like, it is good and it does good stuff, but because of like how highly it gets praised by like newer anime fans or newer manga fans or whatever, there's the backlash, which is like it's actually not that good. It's just average, and it's like there's nuance here.
I'm like on the middle because it's like revisiting it. I did not notice a lot of new stuff, and like it's the execution is fine, but like. I don't know. It's like because when I first read it, I gave it like an 8, and now I have it at like a 6. So I would be curious to revisit it.
Stay tuned.
But,
next time we're putting the Hunter x Hunter Nen Show on hold. Vote now on your phones so we can read My Hero Academia.
Yep. Anyway, we're almost done. So there's the whole chapter with the romance stuff that I mentioned.
And just remember, we're going to potentially cover this alongside Chapter Black. In the same episode. Think about that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I thought you it was just like the shocked silence. I was like, I killed Craftsdwarf.
Anyway, but yeah, the romance, like, there was Chu and, what was her name? Nagisa?
Yes, something like that.
Yeah, yes, that was it. Where, you know, he's like in love with her, because I love a woman who can beat the shit out of me, apparently, is his mindset, but he also wants to surpass her, and then Kaito has a girl, I guess, or someone who, like, I don't know.
See, that chapter was really interesting, because it was a lot of, like, individual stories tied together, and even then, like, Togashi was shifting formats. Like, Kaito's little page is in, like, a 4-coma style.
Yes. Where it chooses, like, straight up just battle manga, and then, like, some of it's just, like, more comedic. Like, there's a part where the demon girls, like, the announcers from the Dark Tournament are talking about the boys they like, and then, like, it cuts to they just sneeze.
Yeah.
And...
Of course, because, like, that's how shonen manga, that's how they do their romance. It's just like, oh, by the way, last minute, these characters had a crush on these characters, and, this...
There's even one of them we see freaking Yusuke's actual dad, who sort of kind of
that
has a
was
thing
not that.
Still.
It's very interesting seeing like what parts of this weren't in the anime, because like I think was that Kuwabara's dad as well that showed up at one point, or someone related to Kuwabara.
Maybe.
Well, yeah, because Yusuke's dad shows up and has a conversation with his mom briefly. That wasn't in the anime, but then there's also like someone related to Kuwabara and like how Yukina is like in their care, so like Kuwabara's with Yukina. That wasn't in the anime that I remember.
I forget what part that was at. Was it in this chapter?
I don't think it was in this chapter, but I forget if it was before or after.
It was probably before, because I remember seeing Yukina earlier. Maybe it was after, and I'll get to it. But I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about. But no, it was like, because this romance chapter is definitely kind of like what the one that made me think about how like this is what a series that's being canceled feels like, where it just kind of jumps around to the experimental stuff. But again, like Togashi planned for it to end where it did, so okay, like yeah, because after that we get the cult. The boys have to come together to stop the guys from killing, you know, using the big old spirit laser.
I do think it's also funny the way that Togashi does have genuine romances in this story. Like, I guess there's a degree to which Kuwabara and Yukina's is kind of comedic, but it's also genuine, and like Yusuke's and Keiko's is genuine. But like here towards the end, it's almost like a lot of the romances he sets up are kind of punchlines, which is kind of funny. Like obviously the stuff with the two characters in the actual tournament, but then even later where it's just like a throwaway like sneeze gag.
Yeah, these girls like those guys, and it's like maybe they'll get together one day, but we won't see that because the story is over. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, there's like, and I guess it does build into like because the last chapter is more of the romance stuff because it puts the cap on with Yusuke and Keiko because they cool down from the last conflict, and Yusuke is dead. No,
but
he's not.
Here's
He's
the
just kidding.
thing: that last the final hurrah chapter was not in the anime, so the whole the context it has for the final chapter in the manga and their interaction that's just gone. So they're talking about other stuff. I don't remember exactly what it was that they discussed.
Okay, yeah. So basically, they cut out the whole spirit religion thing and just go straight. Because I guess this is a more reasonable follow up to the romance stuff, where maybe they'll expand it on that a bit and then go into this, where it's here's because that's the thing. It was a bunch of episodic romance stories. So why not end it with Yusuke and Keiko, right? The one that's been going since chapter 1.
Yeah. Because I know that Two Shots, which was the Kuramahie backstory chapter, and then this one, when I looked into the YuYu Hakusho OVA from last year, I think, which I want to watch it. I want to see what they did with it. But those were the two chapters they adapted.
Okay.
Because it was a big selling point, never before seen in anime. These the two chapters that weren't adapted, obviously.
But yeah, it is
Sorry, never mind. I'm more just rambling about how Three Kings was paced at that point. Because it's they took these chapters but didn't take these chapters. But eh.
Thematic breakdown: Three Kings versus Three Kings win. Oh no, I planted the idea in her head. That would be interesting, actually.
Although, unfortunately, they didn't get to translate the line, which is really good in the final chapter, where Yusuke... it was something like Yusuke said about the religion stuff. It's they may have a god, but I have a goddess on my side. And it's Keiko, and it's just a panel, and it's they're good.
Yeah, no, that was what I was going to go to, because he chose her favorite color, and she's because their relationship, they parted for 3 years, and he's like, please don't dump me, and she's like, it's too late for that, and then the actual arc happens, but then here,
which is kind of a dick move, hey, wait for me for 3 years, and she's like, well, mate, we'll find out. I'll introduce you to my boyfriend.
She's mad at him, obviously, she obviously she didn't, but she just grabs him and dunks him water, and it's cute, and that's the end of the series. It was a romance manga the whole time.
It was the long-awaited sequel to Togashi's first romantic comedy manga that nobody even knows about. Nobody even read it, but it's here.
I don't think it's in English.
No, because I tried to look up a translation for it, and there's one chapter translated.
Sad. You'd think the Togashi stands would remedy that.
Or maybe it wasn't one chapter. Maybe it was one volume. I don't know. Basically, none of it is translated.
Yeah, not complete. So that's very sad. So overall, final thoughts on Yu Yu Hakusho? I guess anime and manga, especially in comparison, because you have gone through both.
It's a good manga. Thanks for tuning in. I mean, no. So I'd originally given the anime a 7 out of 10. After going through the manga, I think I'd give this story an 8. I think it's good. But it's also not...
Both the anime and manga?
Not...
An 8?
Yeah, collectively, the story, I think, is an 8. Because it's, I picked up some more ideas from the story, and I, felt like I had a better grasp of the themes, and it... one of my issues was the ending of Chapter Black initially, but after reading through it again in the manga and discussing it, I feel better about the way that sort of concluded. Even if sort of the ending of Three Kings, the comment you brought up, is a very valid point of criticism, and it's, Togashi throwing his world building in the trash, perhaps, which is not great.
Maybe some of the comments will have a different take on it. I still think it's really weird as a narrative choice. And like I said, I do think there's interesting things that it's just like, and maybe it is just a personal problem, like, and that's not like an actual flaw of the series, but like, I do like like you said, there are other people who find the ending frustrating as well, and apparently the anime didn't go into this aspect as much, at least, and because it was a lot of text, so I feel like it would have taken up enough of the episode to like be noticeable, like with the why things are happening. But yeah, so I guess like because of that ending, I gave it a strong 6. So, but after the discussion, I've decided to I bumped it up to a 7. So
okay, that's acceptable. That's acceptable for me.
Both scores were acceptable.
So it's like even a 6. That's like what the score you gave Fairy Tail?
No, I gave Fairy Tail a light 6, and YuYu Hakusho is at a strong 6. It's different.
Okay. Gotcha.
Doing the thing we forgot to do with One Piece, and some thankfully haven't forgotten since. Arc rankings, favorite fights, and favorite characters. Shall we start with the arc ranking?
Yes, and I'm gonna have to kind of ad-lib this because I don't have them prepared, but I pretty much know them in my head.
In that case,
except for like, what are the divisions for?
So
go through yours so I can remember
mine,
the divisions for the Spirit Detective stuff.
So my least 2 favorite are equal to each other: Genkai Selection and Maze Castle. If you remember my discussion, I just found them overall fairly boring, without enough interesting things to keep them going. Compared to Spirit Detective, which I put as above them. Both, I would, use Spirit Detective had a lot of interesting exploration of Yusuke's character, and Yusuke's character is basically like the one thread throughout the entire series that, was pretty much always interesting, and these 2 stories didn't do as much for that, so I just didn't find them super compelling or engaging. Above them, I would probably put, like, Three Kings, which, again, has a lot of interesting things. It doesn't necessarily do, as much, like, again, I understand why the series is like that. I've talked about it since episode 1, but, like, the reasons for the arc being this way don't necessarily excuse the not excuse the arc. Like, there doesn't need to be an excuse, but they don't, like, make me rank the arc higher because it could have been better. Like, I just wish it was better. And, it does some interesting things. And it is, like, again, it is interesting. But yeah, it was my least favorite arc period because of that one really bad thing I don't like. But again, after discussing it, I bumped it up. My third favorite arc, the fourth arc I'm mentioning, is Spirit Detective, because like I said, great setup, lots of, some parts that are just like, okay, that's happening, and yeah, introducing Yusuke's character, introducing Hiei, basically the main 4, it's good. Second favorite arc would be Dark Tournament, which, has interesting aspects to it, mostly, like, I was, just kind of like, it's fine. Yusuke versus Toguro is really fucking great. Like, Toguro and Yusuke, like, just, like, those two make up what makes that arc good. And obviously, like, if you came here from the last episode, Chapter Black's still my favorite arc. Overall, really solid, really good conflict, some cool ideas. Even if, it's mostly, like, Yusuke and Sensui. But, I'd say, like, as far as, like, side characters go, I really like, Mitsurai and, like, Kaito are more standout, than, like, the demons who show up in Three Kings and Dark Tournament. Like, yeah, Chu is fine, Jin is fine, but, like, they're not as standout as characters to me, I guess. Like, as far as the ones outside of the main hero and, protagonists and antagonists. So, yeah. Chapter Black, good. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so if I had just been doing it by sagas, so pretty much like all of the stuff before Dark Tournament would like collectively be at the bottom. If I had to be more specific with it, I would probably say that like Maze Castle probably Genkai Selection. I think I'll probably put Genkai Selection at the bottom, and then Maze Castle, just because Kurama and Hiei are there.
That's fair. Your boys, that makes sense.
So then there's the Spirit Detective the Spirit Detective shenanigans, because, like I said, the introductory chapter is one of the best in the manga. It's a very strong start, and that largely, not even to say that the other chapters are bad, but just by way of that chapter being so standout, it really helps elevate it even above the 2 arcs before that. So then those are like all the initial arcs, right? I'm not missing one.
No, you're good. You're only missing the actual, like, the other 3 episodes, basically.
Okay, so then pretty much already know it's Dark Tournament at 3, 3 Kings at 2, and then Chapter Black at 1. And my justification is that I feel as though after the Yusuke, including and after the Yusuke versus Toguro fight, I just feel as though Yu Yu Hakusho, like, it just became far more interesting to read consistently, and it stayed that way for the rest of the manga. Like, even if Three Kings is very flawed, but I think it's flawed in ways, other than, like, that last part and the whole throwing the world building in the trash, potentially, that's not great. But, everything else, even if it's, like, unfinished and flawed, I just think it's flawed in very interesting ways. And even then, as, like, a moment-to-moment reading experience, it's more engaging than most of the Dark Tournament was for me. Even if there were fights that I didn't fully appreciate, but did have more thematic connections to the overall message of, like the fight with the Doctor. Not the Chapter Black fight with the Doctor, but the Doctor team and the people who's manipulating.
I did think about Chapter Black, even though you're talking about Dark Tournament. I knew you were. I don't know. That was weird because you specified, and I was like, oh yeah, good thing you specified, even though I shouldn't have needed. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, because I thought it too. I was like, wait, there was a Doctor fight in Chapter Black. I don't feel like I need to justify why Chapter Black is number 1. It's mainly just like making my distinction between Three Kings and Dark Tournament clear, and it's more I said, it's just that the Yusuke Toguro fight happened, which was a really interesting fight. Probably the best fight in the series, because like it was built up very well, and it's like that fight carries the Dark Tournament arc for me.
I think it's
whereas like
a lot of people.
Well, yeah, that's fair. But like maybe it's also even now, like I've had time away from the overhype of people saying that Dark Tournament was one of the greatest the greatest tournament arc in manga and anime. I definitely don't think it's that great. I think it's just it's a good Shounen tournament arc, which is not a slight against it at all. Even if from a moment to moment basis, I didn't find all the fights super appealing, and I think that comes down to kind of the power system being not as not being super defined. And again, it's not that the fights are bad, but it's not. I didn't feel as though to make like a Nen comparison or. Even just like the ways in other shonen, like Bleach or One Piece or whatever, the way that powers can kind of reflect a character arc, or the many different ways that they can be implemented. I just didn't feel like the Dark Tournament fights, most of them had that kind of appeal. Even if you get to see Hiei being cool, get to see Yusuke and Kurama being cool. Lots of very aesthetic shots, especially in how the anime does it. With you get Shinbo episodes in there. Oh boy.
Yeah. Though since you mentioned that, because like I had this thought, and I realized like if we were doing the Nen Show like literally right after Yu Yu Hakusho back in 1994, obviously it wasn't possible, but like Yu Yu Hakusho, like for its faults, it is a very like forward minded series. Like John Cook Respawn was talking about how it involved like human psychology in ways that other Battle Shonen probably didn't. Even if and like the way it's like playing with the mechanics and also like borrowing from its contemporaries with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, like it's doing things that like nowadays are more commonplace, so like I can see like this isn't because a lot of people say this about Dragon Ball too, where it's like, oh, it's influential, like that doesn't excuse the problems, but like and I personally am not the kind of person who likes something for being influential, like I recognize the influence, and like, Yu Yu Hakusho does a lot of like interesting things. Like if we were talking about this, like I said, in the mid 1990s, we'd be like, whoa, this is crazy. Like, I haven't read a lot of the old manga, so, maybe there's other, series that haven't been translated, maybe, or something that are interesting. Probably, I don't know. Shonen's pretty well
Maybe
liked,
there are some of those old school series where we'll end up going back and being like, wow, Yu Yu Hakusho wasn't so innovative.
Maybe,
or,
yeah, at least,
I don't know.
I don't know. We'll see.
To just undercut your point entirely. I'm sorry.
No, absolutely. We're only, coming from, this is the oldest series we've read by a good, like it started 6 years before One Piece. So, or no, 6-7 years before One Piece, and that was the second oldest series we've read. So, and going into Hunter x Hunter, then by because we'll have Fairy Tail and Bleach started in the early to mid 2000s, and everything else we've read except for Yu Yu Hakusho or are going to read started in the late 90s. One Piece in 97, Rave and Hunter x Hunter in 98, and Naruto in 99. So it's the series we've read so far are relatively close to each other, with the exception of Yu Yu Hakusho, which is the farthest away pretty much from it, except not really, but it's closer to One Piece than One Piece is the Fairy Tail, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it is older, and that and again, I've read, we both know a lot about Dragon Ball, but we're missing out on a lot of those, Saint Seiya and Kinnikuman, Ring ni Kakuro. Even though it's a sport manga, it's still pretty important. There's a lot of those other old ones we don't have the context for. So even Yu Yu Hakusho definitely does seem to do a lot of interesting things, relatively speaking. But we're also familiar with those unique things now. So when I give it a 7 out of 10, it's it's interesting but flawed, and I do like a lot of aspects to it. I do think it's there's some good stuff here, and I like the stuff that I like a lot. And there's only the one thing I don't really like. So I don't know. It's a good series. I can see why people like it. I could see why other people don't like it. I forget where I was going with that. But it was a big deal when it aired. It was one of the golden trio alongside Slam Dunk and Dragon Ball. It was competing with Dragon Ball and outselling it at times. That's notable. And it's interesting and good, and it's Togashi's cool. So I guess we're about done? Or no, fights and characters, Doi.
I always forget that we do fight rankings.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 1, Toguro versus Yusuke. Number 2, actually no, I could think of some for this.
Yeah, because I'm also Yusuke versus Toguro is the best fight in the manga. It's not even much of a contest. Though I would also put up I also really liked the whole Demon King showdown in Chapter Black, and Kurama versus Kaito was fun.
Kurama versus Kaito, and then the whole battle with the Game Master.
Yes, both of those are good. I can't think, with Sensui, it's the conflict is really good for that arc. The fight itself, it's just the characters kind of fighting, and, since, there was an interpretation of the holy energy thing, from, Respawn, the guy in our comments section who's why haven't you read his comments? As I guess the way he put it was more about righteousness, or maybe even just self-righteousness, where Genkai, obviously she's not into the whole justice thing, where Sensui 100% believes what he's doing is the right thing. So that was, I guess, but yeah, I don't, either way, the fight itself, I'm not sure about how I feel about the fight itself, it's but even if the conflict is really good, so I don't really can't really think of any other fights aside from those 3 that it really struck me.
Yeah, because there's nothing really in the final arc that stands out.
Yeah, and even then, 2 of those fights aren't even fights. They're just battle, territory battles.
Yeah.
I guess art-wise, Yusuke versus Chu is notable. Holy shit, that was probably some of my favorite art in the manga. Though Yusuke versus Toguro also had really good art. So yeah. Is it bad that I have more notable Fairy Tail fights than I do Yu Yu Hakusho fights?
Hey, at least I'm consistent. I never have memorable fights. Although with Yu Yu Hakusho, I was able to remember, the 3 where I was yeah, these, the Kurama stuff pretty much or the Kurama Kaito thing, and then the Game Master conflict. But
Anyway,
yeah, like after that, Yusuke Toguro, that's kind of it.
How do you feel? Because I see with characters, I'm curious what you have to say. Because I know a couple, at least two. Your aesthetic. Oh yeah. So we didn't answer the question. Who is your? Okay, so we know. I think you said in the anime, Kurama is your aesthetic character, but is it still Kurama in the manga or is it Hiei?
It's both. I can't decide. It honestly like depends on what I recently. Yeah, it honestly depends because like Hiei will have a cool moment. I'm like, yeah, Hiei, and then Kurama will have a cool moment, and I'm like, yeah, Kurama.
But anyway, favorite characters in general, like not just the aesthetic character, or I guess to summarize, Deidara, Gin from Bleach, Smoker,
Yeah,
Shuda.
so YuYu Hakusho is so good that it has two aesthetic characters.
So that automatically makes it the most aesthetic series. Anyway, Shuda from Rave and Fairy Tail Head Gajeel. So, and now he and Kurama from YuYu Hakusho.
Maybe I should just bump Shuda off the list because, like, honestly, now that I have two choices and Shuda was kind of just like the aesthetic character by default.
I just imagine like a shocked Shuda face, like, how could you? Like, I don't know why my brain went that direction, but anyway.
Oh, that reminds me, because like Shuda had the thing where he had like the ballet as a character trait.
Yes, that was
there was the one chapter cover which was like Hiei in an apron, and he was like flipping a pan of the three chibi heads of the characters, and it was very good.
House husband Hiei. Kurama has to be the wife. Wait. So,
although it's funny you mentioned that, because then there were also like the little throwaway jokes that like, oh, Kurama looks like a girl. Kurama could go to this all-girls school or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. That was funny because, well, first, Kurama and Yusuke were walking around and like, oh, Yusuke has a, and they were like, oh, look.
Well, no, it was Kurama and Kuwabara.
Kuwabara, you're right. No, you're right. I was misremembering again. They was like, oh, look, they're a couple, and Kurama like got mad because when the girls' school come up later, so it's like, I guess I don't need to disguise myself, do I? And Keiko's like, or someone was like, did something happen? Like, I forget. I meant to bring that up because it was funny.
Yeah, I also like how the translation did it. It was like something bad must have happened to him last week because it's a weekly manga. So
I love that shit. You're right. That's good. But yeah, see, it's funny because like I feel like I would have I like part of me definitely says like I would have never mistaken Kurama as a girl, but then like I also knew he was a boy for literally like when did the anime air on Toonami? Like, so it's like ingrained in me. Whereas like yeah, apparently the Filipino dub saw Kurama and was like, this is a girl somehow. So it's like, yeah, okay, that's just me, my sort of preconception, and again knowing the series for so long. So
yeah, I guess for me it was like I'd come off of Hunter x Hunter, which has like Kurapika, which is a very androgynous character, and so with Kurama, I kind of already, I guess, had been conditioned by Kurapika to know like, Togashi's sort of visual. Not visual tells, but like how he draws his cute boys. Like he's got beautiful boys, and that's how it be.
Anyway, I guess to give so obviously favorite character is Yusuke. He was consistently the most interesting. He's a doofus. He's a fun. I like him. Hiei. I had it like I would like, mostly like the reason I'm mentioning him so soon, like because honestly I would is like. The last, I didn't realize what Three Kings does for him. Like, yeah, if I have an issue is that, like, yeah, a lot, like, during Dark Tournament, like, what focus do these characters really get? Like, they have powers and stuff, but are they getting, like, cool character explorations? And, but he, like, in Three Kings, he got some cool shit that I only just realized in this discussion right now. And yeah, he's a good edgy boy. Like, even if I, even if I like don't, find the characters super interesting in some ways, like they're definitely like, yeah, they have fun interactions and stuff. And I get why people like them, and it's probably like, yeah, I'm curious about the dub because a lot of people like highlight this is the YuYu Hakusho, like the definitive experience because, the dub apparently voice act, does things and cool things. I don't know. I'll watch it one day.
I definitely understand where the Sasuke inspiration comes from here because half the time when we were talking about Hiei, it's like, oh, he's so edgy, he's good, and that's what we did with Sasuke. Yes. So
Though, yeah, and especially part 1 Sasuke, where he's like, I don't want to be friends with you or anything, but I am also your friend and energy. Yeah, like and of course, like moving really fast. Like I don't know if I mentioned that one, but like in Chapter Black when he stabbed a sniper Hagiri, I think, and like that was like Sasuke does shit like that where he just like almost teleports because of how fast he's moving, like stuff like that. And we'll talk about the Kurapika thing because you linked me something interesting that pointed out some things I hadn't considered, because we definitely talked about it when we started Naruto, but we'll talk about that when we start Hunter x Hunter. But anyway, Toguro and Sensui, really great antagonists, really great foils to Yusuke, who offered some interesting conflicts, which in some of my favorite parts of the manga. I don't think I have a fifth. Like I have a few characters, like Keiko's cute, Botan is cute, Genkai is cool, Kurama and Kuwabara. I guess if I had to choose, I'd probably pick Kuwabara. Then as far as like other side characters goes, it's like Mitsurai and Kaito. I can't. I think that's about all. Like I can't think of anyone else right now who I liked. But there's a few choices. I don't think I have an outright number 5. Because Kuwabara would be the closest probably. But anyway, yeah.
There are too many good characters to choose. Just like a Togashi work. Ha ha ha. Okay, so yeah, because I definitely have that issue too, where it's like I could probably do a top 10 and it'd be real easy. But like top 5, so my favorite probably Hiei, because like as far as character arcs go, his stuff. I mean, like Dark Tournament didn't really do much as far as like the trust, but otherwise like the moment in Three Kings, the backstory, and of course him just being an edgy aesthetic boy that helps. But yeah, he had good character stuff there. Number 2, it pains me, but I have to give it to Yusuke because he is probably the best written character in the series and the most consistently interesting. And then like he's got really good fights, like the fight with Toguro, the fight with Sensui. He's just a very, very unique protagonist, and the sort of conflicts that his character and like his sort of moral grayness is able to explore is very interesting. Number 3 would be Kurama because he's an aesthetic boy, and is that honestly it? Is that why he's number 3? Yeah, he's got good moments. Like his introductory chapter is really good.
And I like his whole because he's the demon who cares about humans the most. Because that's the thing is like in that one chapter where like humans better than demons, like the demon that's better is Kurama who likes humans. So because like that's he doesn't have like a major arc throughout, but he's got cool moments. He's got the rose aesthetic and the plants are cool. I get it. Kurama's good.
And then plus like him being kind of the strategist, he leans more into Togashi's like clever sort of fight mechanics. Sometimes he just has magical plant bullshit. It's fine, whatever. But like the conflict with Kaito, the game master thing, the Three Kings moment where he's like the strategist there. So he's got cool strategy boys, smart boy stuff. This is tough. Number 4, it could. One of them is Kaito because he's a really good jobber character, and like I don't know, like something about him specifically is just like really interesting, and how he's used, and how he even comes back again in Three Kings, points. And he's there to kind of contextualize.
Yeah.
And then like what you had said in the Chapter Black episode, where like even in losing, he still embodied the shonen spirit by using his guesses.
And honestly, and I will say like I wouldn't have even put Kaito in that list if not for some of the things you said in that episode too. Like I love how we both made each other appreciate Kaito even more. He's a good boy.
Yeah, so whether he's 4 or 5, I'm not sure, because he's competing with Toguro, who, again, like, he's a large part of he is, like, the main thing that made Dark Tournament good and kept it engaging. The reason why I'm not just like, oh, Dark Tournament was okay. Like, no, Dark Tournament was good because Toguro is a good antagonist, and he, tied together the whole thing nicely. And, of course, his conflict with Yusuke was good, and it opened up you know, it led into stuff with Sensui, who would probably be my number 6. Like, he just misses out. Because, again, like, the whole stuff getting into the humanity is evil narrative. And but overall, like, Sensui, it's more like Chapter Black is just a really well-structured arc. Less so that, like, Sensui carries it. Which Toguro, to me, carries Dark Tournament.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
So those are my 5.
Yeah.
Kuwabara, unfortunately, like, he's good. I love him. He's a good boy, but he's not top 5 material, unfortunately.
Very
There's just
sad.
too many strong characters in this series.
Yeah, he's got he invented the curse of Leorio.
Yeah, like, I'd probably even say that, like, I don't know, because Keiko's good too. But,
Yeah.
Eh.
But anyway, I believe that about covers it. Next time, we are reading My Hero Academia. No, Hunter x Hunter, which, like, we mentioned, talked about, like, Kurapika, and, like, I just, like, had moments of, like, ooh, I'm getting excited, because this discussion is going to be 6 hours long. I'm not excited about that. But we're doomed. Like, I'm sorry that you're going to have such long episodes to sit through. Or maybe I should be glad, because you get so much content. I don't like having to edit as long episodes. But
it's been the highly anticipated title of the podcast.
Yes.
We're finally getting to Hunter x Hunter.
See, and I'm conflicted because, like, normally my stance has been, like, just read through it and analyze it on my own. But the difference with, like, things like with One Piece, like, there wasn't, like, before I did, like, the videos I've done this year, like the self-sacrifice one being the start of it, like, you know, Mr. Moore's just been doing, you know, keeping along, even though his stuff isn't really in my style, but it's like there hasn't been, like, there as much writing with One Piece. But with Hunter x Hunter, like, I know of a good blog that talks about Nen abilities, and I know Alexander has, someone counted 26 Hunter x Hunter videos. Like, I mean, not all of them are, like, necessary, like, especially the older ones, like the Royal Guards video is basically just, like, a worse version of the Shiapoof video, honestly.
And even just outside of Alexander, there are so many AnyTube videos out there about Hunter x Hunter. Like, I've made a couple, Digi's made some.
Right.
I mean, like,
the
who's who of AnyTube have probably covered Hunter x Hunter at least once at some point.
Right, so I think, like, I could delve into that. Maybe I'll just, I don't know, because, like, I've talked about, like, obviously I haven't done it because it would take a lot of time, but making a playlist of, like, good One Piece analysis videos. Doing Hunter x Hunter would be harder because there'd be more to watch. You know, we're doing something like YuYu Hakusho would be easier because there's actually not a lot at all. Like, there's, for YuYu Hakusho, there's, like, Alexander's video, and I looked up Yusuke character analysis, and there was, like, nothing at least worthwhile in like, the kind of thing I'm looking for.
I think I remember Hiding in Public made a video on, but I think it was also kind of like a personal sort of thing, so I'm not entirely sure how much.
Right. So, so it's interesting because, like, that's the thing is YuYu Hakusho, like, I made it My Hero Academia joke, but it's like, there's a pretty obvious, like, it's pretty obvious as to what shonen are, like, liked and respected. Like, One Piece is honestly kind of the anomaly because, like, the manga is just so good that it's, like, so well loved, whereas, like, JoJo didn't become as popular as it was until it got a good anime adaptation. My Hero Academia, good anime adaptation. Hunter x Hunter, Yu Yu Hakusho, Kimetsu no Yaiba more recently, good anime adaptation, and people like these series, even though the series were always good in the manga. And whereas, like, Naruto and Bleach, bad anime, therefore bad shonen, right? I don't really agree with that, you know? So it's like, again, it's pretty obvious as to, like, what the general community, like, starts, because I'm really, like, I had the idea I want to go back and read, like, initial reactions to, like, this Chimera Ant chapters and see if I hear the same kind of dumb arguments you get with, like, One Piece and stuff, because it would be interesting to see, like, people, like, just missing the mark and saying the same, like, tired things about the Chimera Ant arc, which it got the anime
especially
adaptation,
with Chimera Ant with all the hiatuses. So there's even more expectations for, like, when the chapters return to be like, okay, this needs to be good because I've waited for so long for this.
Yes, so I'm curious as to what, because nowadays people, like, when they talk about the current hiatuses, it's like they know it's going to be good, and there's definitely, like, you know, lack of satisfaction about like Togashi's art and the releases, but, like, no one's complaining about the story or saying things don't make sense. And I'm wondering if that was always the case, or did the anime come out and a lot of people start talking about it and change the perception? Like, that's what I'm kind of curious about, because, again, like, with Shounen discussion, it's the Full Metal Alchemist is another one I didn't mention, but it's like, the general perception is very intrinsically linked to the anime adaptation, or at least historically it has been. Hopefully, now you can just literally read Shonen Jump for, a decent price, like the entire magazine. So hopefully that starts to change and more people talking about stuff. I don't know. But I'm off topic. Next time we're actually reading Hunter x Hunter. Just a Hunter exam, chapters 1 through 38. Yep. Hunter x Hunter. It's going to be interesting. We are going to be talking spoilers, so if you have not read the manga up to where the anime ends, which is a chapter I do not remember, I think it was like, I just checked, 339, give or take. Or if you haven't watched the anime, I'd recommend it. It's probably one of the most bingeable, like, series, period. I remember when I was starting watching it, I was like, I should do something. Let's watch an episode of Hunter x Hunter, and then, let's watch a couple more episodes of Hunter x Hunter. Like, I can't do that normally. So very, it's good. And, we might not even bring up a lot of spoilers. We'll see. Like, because with YuYu Hakusho, I went in saying, like, we'll bring up spoilers, but then it turned out not to be necessary for the discussion, So I don't know how we've been spoiling Hunter x Hunter the entire podcast, like, for over 2 years now. So, oh well. Anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for putting up with me and Mathwiz. And we will see you next time.